Good evening. The meeting of the Monroe Township Board of Education will come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. May we have a roll call, Mr. Gorski?
Certainly. Mrs. Arminio. Here. Mr. Braverman. Mr. Chiarella. Here. Mrs. DeMayo. Here. Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Here.
Mrs. Lang.
Here.
Mrs. Carino. Here. Mr. Ryback. Here. Mr. Russo. Here. Mr. Rudsky.
Here.
Madam Board President, you have a quorum present this evening. In accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law, the Monroe Township Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted April 20th, 2018 at all schools, the Home News Tribune, Cranberry Press, and filed with the clerk of the municipality.
Thank you. At this time, we needed the approval of the minutes for the Public Board of Education meeting of March 22nd, 2018.
I move.
I'll second.
Mrs. Lang and Mr. Rutsky. Any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Ms. Carino is abstaining. Any other abstentions? Okay. The approval of the minutes for the special Public Board of Education meeting of March 27, 2018.
So moved.
Mrs. Lang,
Second.
second by Mr. Ryback. Additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstain.
Ms. Arminio abstains.
So
I
noted.
abstain.
Mr. Rutsky abstains.
So noted.
I was not here.
Ms. Carino's abstaining.
So noted.
Okay. And a approval of the minutes for the closed session meeting of March 27, 2018.
So moved.
Mr. Mayor? Second? Second by Mrs. Lang. Additions or corrections to the closed session minutes? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ms. Arminio is opposing.
Opposed, yes.
Abstentions?
I abstain.
Mr. Rutsky abstains.
Abstain.
Ms. Carino abstains. Okay. Okay, and at this time, we have quite a few presentations this afternoon or this evening. And the first one I will turn over to Dr. Alvick. We have a student presentation by Oak Tree.
Good evening. So this evening we have Oak Tree coming to present on a program that they had for the kindergarten students. It was an MTEA FAST grant. Ms. Laura Goldstein organized this paint party for our kindergarten students. The grant provided the students and their parents, the grant provided for students art canvases, aprons, artist hats, paints, and brushes, along with step-by-step instructions by a local artist, Kathleen Meralda from the Cranberry Station Gallery. I had the pleasure of getting to go and visit one of the classrooms while they were working on mixing paint colors and creating their masterpieces. So I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Dinsmore and Mrs. Goldstein.
Hello. Good evening, everybody. I'm Patty Dinsmore. I'm the very proud principal of Oak Tree School. I am honored to introduce to you tonight a unique event that took place in March at Oak Tree, involving our entire pre-K and kindergarten staff, families, as well as Mrs. Meralda, the owner of the Cranberry Station Art Gallery. Research has continually shown the importance of incorporating art education within the school curriculum, including gains in motivation, concentration, confidence, and teamwork. While our half-day pre-K and kindergarten programs do not presently include formal art instruction, Our staff works diligently to provide multiple opportunities for students to create, using paint, crayons, scissors, markers, and yes, glue, while integrating artistic themes into social studies, science, math, and reading lessons. Here to tell you more is special education instructor and writer of the MTEA FAST grant, Mrs. Laura Goldstein.
I do not consider myself to be an artist. However, I have been invited to attend several paint parties over the past few years and have come out with pieces of art that look like an artist made them. We were talking about this at a grade level meeting, and the team and I discussed the idea of inviting our students to experience a paint party during the school hours and inviting their family in to participate. And at that meeting, the idea for our grant, Kindergarten, Teaching Diversity and Kindness Through the Arts, was born. The MTEA FAST grant provided the funds for a complete experience for the kids, including adorable artist berets that you will see in the video. And Kathy Moralda, who's a local artist, just was a fantastic teacher who taught them step-by-step, developmentally appropriate ways to make a painting that really looked like an earth with children holding hands around it. And here, without further ado, is the video of our grant in action.
If you look up there, I'm going to keep that on the overhead projector. Thanks, Mr. Bars. We have a visual that you can kind of get an idea of what we're going to do today. We're trying to make a circle of the world, of the earth, and then all the children around it. You can add more children on, you can make less, but that gives you an idea. And they're all different colors of the rainbow. So when we get to that, you're going to make those children around the earth any colors you want. Everyone's a different color, right? Everyone's a different shade. Everyone has favorite colors, so it doesn't make any difference, right? We're all the same, and we all have the same earth. Well, the exciting part about today is that the MTEA has decided that it would be a nice idea, along with the teachers, the kindergarten teachers in preschool, to put the art back in kindergarten.
Don't take any more paint on
Wherever it's lighter.
The Monroe Township Education Association, which is our local teachers union, put together some FAST grants, which is families and schools together. And they encouraged us to find areas where we could bring families into the school and provide rich experiences for the students. So the kindergarten team and I got together and I wrote up the grant, and we were awarded it, which was a great thrill to provide this opportunity for our students.
On your sticks, please put your paintbrush up in the air so I know.
Ready? Ready? You take there.
But you have to leave some blue. Remember, the earth has more.
Okay, I'm a red one. You have a yellow one.
In this busy life, there aren't a lot of opportunities for kids to sit with messy paint, all dressed up like an artist, and just kind of discover that you can make red and yellow turn into orange. So that was really wonderful for us to see.
You put your beret on and your apron on, so you don't make a mess.
And now we have 4 wonderful students who came to show you their masterpieces. So please give a round of applause. Here is Michaela. Come and show your art. So beautiful. You can show. And Leah. So we're very proud of
That's beautiful. Did you students have a good time doing this? And what a nice gift for mom and dad. Yeah. And thank you to the MTEA for continuing to support all of our students in these wonderful activities that we showcase every month at our board meetings. It's really nice to see what is happening in our classrooms. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we will have a presentation by the Henry Rickless Holocaust Memorial Essay Committee. Dr. Kozak?
Yeah. So it's with great pleasure that we ask David Rothman to come up, and every year our students get the opportunity, the wonderful opportunity to participate in this essay contest, and every year Mr. Rothman comes out and is able to present either the winners or winner of the essay contest, and we always look forward to hearing the students. Hopefully read. I don't know if they're going to read tonight or not.
We'll have one or two
Maybe?
Do that. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right.
A pleasure to be before you, Dr. Kozak, members of the board. Just a little brief background. Henry Rickless was a liberator. He liberated Dachau. And he had a business, came back to New Jersey, and when it was time to retire, came to where else? Monroe Township, moved to Concordia. He saw the need to have something to commemorate what happened in the Holocaust, and he created a committee, and upon his passing, we named it after him. Now, every year we have a Holocaust essay contest. It's voluntary, and I want to call out Matt DeFilippis, somewhere here, and also Bonnie Casaletto. They make it seamless for us. Freshman class comes in, and we're able to bring 3 Holocaust survivors. And every Holocaust survivor story is unique. Well, Lithuania, Poland, France, so forth. And then we challenge the students. Your choice. After hearing them, do some more research, and we give them 8 possible essays. Well, last year we got, all voluntary, 280 essays were turned in, the highest number ever. All good, 10 were outstanding. I'd like to share at least 2 of them to your question, Dr. Kozak. And the first one I'd like to call up is Brenda Chavez. Brenda, are you somewhere here? Come on up. And I'm going to turn this over to you. The challenge to her was, why is it important to even learn about the Holocaust? And what do we do with those lessons going forward? Brenda.
Okay. Good afternoon, evening.
Put that down.
I'm short. It is hard to imagine that 72 years ago, Europe was consumed by an enormous cloud of hatred that blinded thousands of people. The blood of innocent Jews was spilled due to harmful messages that encourage anti-Semitism. Men, women, and children were victims of the Holocaust because they were different. These innocent people were used as scapegoats for all of Germany's problems. One should never forget the millions of lives lost during the period of darkness because these victims deserve to have a voice that must be heard. That is why it is very important for students to learn about the hate crimes that were directed towards a group of people that were thought to be inferior. Students will be able to understand what racism and prejudice can do in a matter of time. The lessons learned about the Holocaust can be used in today's world that is still consumed with biased opinions towards certain religious and racial groups. The Holocaust is a very tough and grim subject to learn about, but the lessons that can be derived from this period of time is very essential for students of today's generation. Students will understand how feelings of racial superiority can brainwash millions of people into hurting and killing others just because they are different skin tones or religions. They will learn how racist messages that are spread and shared with others can quickly convince young people that they are superior or better than other citizens. This lesson can help students prevent such harmful and hateful words to grow popular amongst their peers. Learning about the deaths of Jews during the Holocaust can teach students to accept religious diversity in their communities. To learn how to accept diversity will make students understand that everyone is equal no matter what. Unfortunately, the Holocaust could have been prevented if everyone came together and fought against early anti-Semitic plans. The importance of learning about the Holocaust will teach students not to be a bystander and not to allow actions that hurt other people take place. Students will learn how to stand up for not just themselves, but for anyone else who is being attacked and needs help. These valuable lessons that can be learned from the Holocaust can also be used in today's world. Students will be able to look at a person from a different religion and know how to accept them for the person that they are, not to hate them for what they believe in. These young students will not be infected by the hatred that might have spread through their friends because they now know what prejudice can do after learning about the Holocaust. They will have an understanding of what can happen if they let themselves be filled with offensive ideas. The important lesson of never being a bystander can be extremely valuable because the children will know that they have the power to change the world and make it a better place to live in. They will be able to fight for what is right instead of allowing the wrong thing grow bigger. It took 6 million Jews to have their lives taken away for the whole world to realize that they must change their way of thinking. 6 million innocent lives were targeted because they were not seen as ideal humans. Learning about the Holocaust can prevent another tragic event like this to occur. Students will learn the importance of accepting and treating everyone equally because no one is better than the other. Their eyes will not see color or religion, but instead they will see quality of someone's heart. As they listen to the sad stories of Holocaust survivors, the students will understand that the world needs more loving people that want to unite everyone as one, instead of separating and tormenting families. The Holocaust should not be an event that is forgotten, but it should live in the memories of all as a lesson. It should remind us how many lives have left this earth because they were different. The Holocaust should teach our children that they will never again look at someone and make that person feel inferior to them. Lastly, the Holocaust should be a reminder to everyone that they should love one another, and together they can change the world to a better place for the next generation. Thank you.
This is America, a capitalist system, so we want to make, when you win an essay contest, you get paid for it. So here's your $50 gift certificate, and I'll be calling up the other shortly. Thank you. Okay. Now, another student, one of our 10 winners, Kendra Stevens. She took the question, what would you do or say if you ran into a Holocaust denier? Came in contact. Kendra? Kendra? Please come forward. All yours. Thank you.
When people recall some of the worst events in human history, one of the first ones that comes to mind is the Holocaust. The Holocaust took place over 70 years ago, yet it is still a major topic of discussion for people all around the world today. It is an important part of our history that many people do not want to admit ever happened, and some even believe that it was a Jewish plot to advance their interests. There are those who deny that the Holocaust ever happened, while others say that the Holocaust did occur, but that the 6 million Jews that were targeted by Hitler and the Nazis were not murdered. However, the evidence that the Holocaust occurred and 6 million Jews were eliminated is crystal clear. To begin, Holocaust deniers are people who believe in forms of anti-Semitism. Their beliefs about what they think really happened stem from feelings of hatred towards Jewish people. These people view the idea of the Holocaust as a plot by the Jews to draw attention of their own beliefs, and a way to plant seeds of a Jewish state inside the minds of leaders all around the world. In addition, they deemed that the gas chambers built in the Auschwitz extermination camp never existed. Despite the amount of evidence that we have today, there are still those who remain firm in their beliefs. From personal journals, diaries, newspapers, video footage, and their survivors themselves, there's enough proof to fill an entire library. In my opinion, it doesn't matter what words Holocaust users used to deny the Holocaust and all the people who suffered and ever transpired. Their words are only understood by those who speak the language of fear and hatred. By refusing to admit that millions of Jews were exterminated in the Holocaust also means that they refuse to accept the fact that millions of non-Jewish citizens suffered as well. Countless amounts of research and investigation have been conducted to prove that over 11 million people perished in total, 6 million of which were Jewish. It is hard to think that there are still people on this planet who can deny the existence of the most horrific genocide of all time. If I was to come into contact with a Holocaust denier, the first thing I would ask them would be, what evidence do you have to prove that the Holocaust was nothing more than a story? Honestly, I wouldn't expect them to have a decent enough response, to which I would then proceed to tell them about why their beliefs are incorrect. I would share with them snippets of some of the Holocaust survivor stories that I've heard in school and from the ones I've read about online. Hopefully at the end of our discussion, we would both agree that the Holocaust was very real. It is important for young students and people today to learn about what transpired in the past so that we can prevent the same thing from repeating itself in the future. The Holocaust showed everyone around the world that human beings can become our own worst nightmares, and that fear and hatred are powerful weapons that monstrous people can use to oppress others. My great-grandmother, who escaped from Poland during World War II, told me that in war, there are no winners, there are only survivors. When I try to imagine the pain and suffering that she went through, it only feeds my anger and frustration when I hear of people who say that none of it was real. After she left Poland and came to the United States, she never wanted to go back home because it was simply too painful. In order to prevent the Holocaust from ever happening again, we need to make Holocaust deniers realize that the Holocaust is not something that should be ignored or rejected, even though it took place many years ago. It is only by realizing our mistakes and admitting that they happened that we will be able to learn from them and take careful steps to ensure that the future is peaceful and prosperous. Thank you.
Superb. Okay. Spend this frivolously. Okay. Enjoy it. Thank you. You did great. Okay. Let me read off the other 8 names, and if it be appropriate, I'd like to hand them their gifts. Okay. Caitlin Weissman, please come up. Here you are. Thank you so much. Stay what? Would all of you come back up and stand over here so we could get a good picture? Come on back up. Okay, next I need Zarak Atif. Zarak, thank you. McKenna Paglione. Okay. Okay. All right. Ashley Panarello. Thank you. Mahi, by the way, I never met you before, so I'm not always sure I pronounce it right. So Mahi Purohit. Wow, I got it. Okay. Isabella Moretta. Isabella? Okay. Since I don't trust me with this, Matty Philippus, I'll give this to you afterwards. Okay. Kristen Belko. You're Kristen Belko. And Nikita Nair. Nikita? Nikita? Sounds like Matty Philippus gets 2. We want to have a recording to make sure that do you want to have him sign when he does it? Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Huh? Okay. Thank you all. Appreciate it. And if any of you happen to be free off work on May 10th at 8:30 in the morning, we're going to have for the new freshman class, we are bringing 3 more survivors. So you're all welcome to join us. Thank you.
And thank you for continuing to bring this essay competition to our Board of Education. We look forward every year to listening to what the stories that the children or students are writing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Okay, at this time, the next program on our agenda is Board Training Workshop by New Jersey School Boards Association. With us today, we have Mary Ann Friedman, our board representative to New Jersey School Board Association, And having training is one of the goals that the board has set for ourselves for this year. And we felt that this was a good time to have some training. Thank you, Mary Ann, for being here.
Thank you for having me. I have some packets to send around. So thank you for having me. As you know, many of you will remember I was here last summer, and we did develop board and district goals, and one of the board goals was to have professional development. And so tonight I was asked to come in and talk to you all about your roles and responsibilities as board members, and we call this now Foundations of Board Governance. So the question is, how many board members does it take to change a light bulb? 12? I heard 12 from the audience. How many from the board?
A majority.
A majority. Actually, it takes none. It's up to the board to say, let there be light. It's up to the superintendent to determine what kind of light that will be, incandescent, fluorescent, candle, which we don't see anymore, solar or neon. And then it's really up to the board to make sure that you provide the resources for the superintendent to be able to provide that light and then to evaluate the lighting. So there are really 4 functions of a Board of Education, and we break them into policy, planning, and then accountability and communications. And the first one is to provide guidance through policy development. And you all know that you're a policy-making body. One of the things that you do every year is you review and submit your board self-evaluation, which hopefully you'll be doing shortly. And I would encourage you to do that. That is up online on our website, and you don't need to, anybody can go in and get started on that. The superintendent's evaluation, you need the superintendent to go in and kick that off. But for the board self-evaluation, you all can go in at any point in time. And so that also asks you about how you are doing in terms of policy. And you know that when you do the board self-evaluation, we ask you to rate yourselves as an entity, as a Board of Education, and then we ask you to rate yourselves as individual board members. And then I can come back in and provide the review of that and what all that means, what your compilation means. So as a policy-making body, you want to consider curriculum, personnel, all kinds of things, facility and finance, budget, business management, things of that sort. And then to provide a program of quality instruction, which is the planning piece. And that you're approving curriculum on an annual basis, and you're reviewing new curriculum as it comes out. Perhaps seeing pilots of getting information about pilots that are being piloted in your district. And then getting reports on student achievement, on the results of student achievement in your district. Then we have the oversight and appraisal, which is to provide for the effective management of your school district. And in order to do that, you hire a superintendent. And then the superintendent is the one that figures out how he's going to get you what it is you want to have done in the district. And every year, by statute and by code, you also evaluate the superintendent, at least on an annual basis. So that evaluation process is up and running, and there is a new evaluation process that I think some of you came and had training on, and we also had training, rolled out training at workshop in October of last year at our annual conference in Atlantic City. So in that respect, you're evaluating the superintendent and you're holding the superintendent accountable to you, the board. The other area is to provide two-way communication between the board and the community. You really are the liaison as board members between your community and the district and vice versa. So you want to make sure that you have an appropriate process for communication to the community and from the community to the district and the superintendent. In your packet, you have a much larger version of setting the stage on the right-hand side. And basically what this is showing is that the board determines what it is you would like to see happen in the district. So we say you are the what people. That's not a question. You determine what it is you would like to see happen in the district in the areas of planning, program, personnel, finance, facilities, and communication. And then you do that through your district goal setting process. Those are the things that you develop on an annual basis, and you usually have 4 or 5 goal areas. We don't like you to have more than that, because those are things that you want to have heightened focus on in the upcoming year. So it doesn't include the day-to-day operations of the district. These are focal points for the year. And then your administrative team, your superintendent and administrative team, determine how they're going to get you from where you are in that particular area to where you would like to be at the end of the year. Sometimes goals are multi-year goals, and sometimes you have strategic planning goals as well. But in terms of the annual district goals, those are usually 1-year goals and should be determined by the end of June. Now, in terms of the superintendent's evaluation, you need to evaluate the superintendent by July 1st, which is a process, and getting 9 people or 10 people to do anything can sometimes be like trying to herd cats in an open field. And I say that in the most loving way, because I was a board president and had to do this myself. So you have to work backwards. So that process really should be beginning about now in order to get this done, because you'll have to have, the superintendent needs to go in and complete his portion. Then board members are invited to go in and complete theirs, barring any conflicts of interest. And then the compilation needs to come back to you. The non-conflicted board members need to meet in an executive session, having Rice the superintendent, and you develop the majority opinion of the board, of the non-conflicted members of the board. And then somebody will write up a summary document. And then at your next board meeting, we always suggest that you give the superintendent that summary document about 48 hours before your summary conference. You'll have your summary conference, again, having Rice the superintendent. And that's just for the board and the non-conflicted members of the board, superintendent and non-conflicted members of the board, to be able to address each other about the superintendent's performance and evaluation over the past year. So you're always really evaluating on progress towards the achievement of the goals, not necessarily whether the goal has been achieved or not. Any questions on any of that so far? Okay, so now we're going to get into some roles and some scenarios. So this is designed to be interactive, and I hope that you all will participate as board members with us and tell me why or why not this scenario shouldn't happen or should happen. So the Board of Education has successfully passed an elementary school building referendum, and construction on the school has begun. One of the board members, who runs a large construction company, has begun visiting the construction site every day to speak with the construction manager and check on the progress of the project. Is that something as an individual board member that you should be doing?
No.
No, absolutely. So if you wanted to, as a board, you had a construction project that was in process, and as a board you said, you know what, we'd really like to be able to go over and see what was going on, you would ask the superintendent to schedule a time, and 4 of you could go over at a time, or if you did it at a meeting, you could go over before a meeting, or have your meeting, open your meeting and go over to the construction site. And that way the superintendent has managed that and arranged that with the construction manager, or the business administrator has done so, and then you can look around and they'll take you on a tour of the building. But that's not something that in your day-to-day operations as a board you would be able to do, because the liability in the district would be incredible, and it's micromanagement, so you really don't want to do that. Okay, any questions on that one? Okay, how about in executive session, the majority of the board decides to support the superintendent's recommendation to fire its extremely popular football coach because of a recent unprofessional and unsportsmanlike behavior following a disappointing loss to a big rival. That's a very long sentence. The next day, a board member who strongly disagrees with the decision calls his best friend, who's on the board, whose son is a member of the football team, and tells him about the board's decision, and encourages the friend to bring the team and their parents to the next board meeting to try and get the board to change their decision. Is that something that you should do? No, I'm hearing a lot from the audience. Excuse me. No, that isn't something you should do. First of all, sorry, I'm still battling a cough after a month of bronchitis. First of all, what happens in executive session needs to stay in executive session. So I always think about the old commercial, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So that really needs to be the case. If somebody is conflicted out of being in that conversation in executive session, that doesn't mean that then you should call that person afterwards and say, hi, this is what you missed in executive session. It's for the board member who's conflicted. It's for his or her protection to not be in that meeting, it's for the board's protection for that person not to be in the meeting, and it's for the district's protection for that person not to be in the meeting. Yes?
I have two questions regarding confidentiality in closed session. One, if a board member happened to be absent but they were not conflicted, could they be privy to the information at a later date?
Yes.
Okay, that's one. Secondly, when we are talking about confidentiality, does that mean all the board members have that confidentiality and does that extend also to the president and vice president of the board?
Yes, as you probably are aware, every year at your annual reorganization meeting, which now happens in January because you have a November election, you vote and you approve the Code of Ethics, and you adopt that. And that means that every board member is subject to following that Code of Ethics. And confidentiality is listed in the 10 tenets of the Code of Ethics.
And what happens if after that meeting, it is thought or a member decides that they should consult another party for, I don't know, to help with one of the issues outside of the closed session? Is that acceptable?
I think it would depend on who that person was. If it was the board attorney, that would be something different. If it was another member of the board who wasn't conflicted, as you just asked, and could have been a part of that conversation, I think that would be okay.
But
if it's a conflicted member, or if it's if it's somebody who's not a member of the Board of Education, that would be a direct violation of the confidentiality clause.
Okay, and you answered that, and I thought of something else, but it just. I'll come back to that if I may when I remember the question. Okay.
Was there another question? I thought I heard somebody say question. Okay. Okay, so the next one is the beginning of the annual budgeting process. The Board of Education meets with the superintendent and the business administrator and sets parameters for the budget. Is that something that you should do as a board members?
Yes.
I hope you're doing that. That's what boards should be doing. So you should be meeting to determine what your budgeting parameters are going to be. If you were to get a windfall of money, which is laughable at this point because it just doesn't happen, but if you were to get some additional money from the state, where would you like to see that money go? What would the priorities be? And do you have any strategic planning goals that need to be you need to provide financial resources for over the upcoming year? So those are all conversations that you should be having before the budget is struck and as you're going through the process of developing that budget. And so hopefully boards of education throughout the state have been having those conversations, and I think tonight you're voting on your budget, correct?
We are.
Okay, so hopefully all those conversations have already taken place and you're in good shape in terms of the budget, in terms of adopting the budget. Okay? The next scenario is Claire Murray, a member of the Board of Education, is in the produce section of the local supermarket when two of her neighbors come up to her and ask her and tell her that their daughters have told them that their third grade teacher, Mrs. Smith, spends part of every day talking and texting on her cell phone while she's in her classroom with the students. To calm them down, the board member promises to investigate the situation and make sure that it doesn't continue. Is that something that as an individual board member you should do?
No.
No.
No, so we talked about this the last time that I was in. You have a chain of command, and one of the things that you want to do is be able to, so Claire Murray should have referred those folks back to the chain of command in the lowest level. So they would go talk to the teacher first. If they didn't feel that they had resolution from the situation, then they could go talk to an assistant principal or the principal. If they still don't feel that there's resolution to the issue, then they can go to an assistant superintendent and then to the superintendent. And you all, as a board, are the court of last resort. So you don't want to get involved in the day-to-day. You're all people who care very deeply about your communities and about the kids in your communities, or you wouldn't be sitting here. And what you just had, your two presentations, the kindergarten students and the freshman students who won the Holocaust essay contest, that's why you do what you do. And that's a really great reminder, and I always like to be here for that. So I always offer to go after those things because it does help to remind us of why we do what we do. But you would then be able to, so you can refer somebody through the chain of command and let them know what the chain of command is and tell them you're very concerned about the issue and you hope that they'll, get back to you as they go through. But the reason for that is because most often these situations can be resolved at the lowest level in the chain. But after you refer the person back to the chain of command and go through the steps, you should then give the superintendent a quick call or send a quick email and say, by the way, one of the moms told me, I met, a couple of parents in the supermarket, and they told me that Mrs. Smith, I think it was, in third grade, is talking and texting on her phone and talking on her cell phone while the kids are in class. I just wanted to give you a heads up. That protects you as well as a board member in letting the superintendent know that you've referred folks back to the chain. Were there any questions on this one? I know that this is a hard one because most of the time, the people who are on the board are sitting here because they care very deeply about their communities, and you like to help people. So this kind of goes against the grain of that. But as a board member, it would be something that would be outside of your realm of responsibilities as a board member. You had a question?
Sure. Sometimes people, and whether it is justified or not, fear that there might be some retaliation, and that may be too strong a word, but there may be some concerns about if they say something, their child might not have the same, something may change with their child. And I've heard that on more than one occasion over the years. Again, not saying that it's justified or could be verified, but what happens if someone expresses that kind of concern? I mean, some people are afraid to speak up regardless.
I would suggest then that they go to the next step. So if they didn't want to go to the teacher, they felt that there might be retaliation. And keep in mind that most districts have processes in place where that's something that's really, it's avoided at all costs to have any kind of retribution or retaliation against the child. But they could go to an assistant principal then if it was a teacher, they'd go to an assistant principal, but I pretty much promise you that the assistant principal would ask that person to talk to the teacher as well. They may go and talk with them, with the parent, but they will usually refer back to the chain of command as well. And that's the other reason why, as a board member, you don't just go directly to the superintendent with the claim in terms of him or her fixing that situation, because they're going to refer the parent back to the lowest level in the chain too, because that's where it gets resolved the most. And by the way, resolution doesn't necessarily mean that everybody got what they wanted. Right. It may mean that they understand why they can't get what they want. Okay? Right. Yes?
Yeah, just a comment about that. Mr. Arminio, you're absolutely right. I've heard that comment many, many times. People are afraid, whether they're afraid to say something to a coach because their son or daughter might lose playing time, or they're afraid to say something to a teacher, or a principal, or whomever. One thing that we can do to reassure parents is a follow-up. So if they contact, let's say, the teacher, and they have a question about something going on with their child in the classroom, and they're afraid that there may be retaliation, or even involving the assistant principal or the principal, the assistant principal, or the teacher can follow up in another couple days just to check, to reassure the parent, so that parent has a chance to know that we're not in the business of retaliation. Right. Not at all.
Right. And again, that's why you let the superintendent know, to give him a heads up so that he can then follow up and get back down to that, to that particular person or to the assistant principal or whatever.
But I was unclear at what point you say that, not at the first conversation you have with that person then, after they've gone up through the chain of command.
No, so you've gotten a phone call from me, and I've said that Mrs. Smith, I hope you don't have any third grade teachers, Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith, the third grade teacher, is, there's a problem in the classroom. Then you would refer me to the chain of command. Did you speak to Mrs. Smith first? If you haven't, then you really should do that. Of course. If then you don't feel that you've gotten any resolution to the problem, then go to an assistant principal and so on and so forth. But then after you're done talking with me, the mom that's calling you, you can let the superintendent know in an email or a quick phone call. And I really do mean a quick email or a quick phone call. It doesn't have to be a novel, and it doesn't have to be, a half-hour phone conversation or whatever. But just to let the superintendent know so that they can follow up and make sure that there's been resolution to the situation.
I remembered what I was going to ask you on the other question. Okay, so if there is a need for some reason to go outside of the closed session discussion, either administrator or vice principal, the vice president or president, and, I guess that's, I've got it all, or the attorney. And they do go out after the closed session, we're all sworn to confidentiality. And some action is taken. Should the board be apprised of that as soon as possible, either in an email or?
Generally, you have to be really, and it depends on what what the situation is,
Right.
again, so Mike Kalber, who was our legal, head of our legal, would always say it depends.
Okay.
And I hate to use that phrase because I know it gets people confused, but I think it does really depend. You have to be really careful with emails, though.
Of course.
And we've talked about that, I know we talked about that last year when I was here, never reply to all. It should be one-way information and not responding. If you need to respond to somebody, give them a call. Those kinds of things. But there may be times outside where something is discussed in executive session where then something else has to take place outside of that, either with the board attorney or with an administrator, and that would require some follow-up to the board.
Right, the board should be,
The
before
non-conf-
any decision is made, right? Because sometimes decisions are made in closed session, and then afterwards, another decision
Well,
comes.
technically, you can take a straw poll in executive session, but you can't vote in executive
Right.
session. So all voting that you do has to take place in public. So you may get a straw poll in executive session to see what the majority of the board's wishes are, and then be able to follow through with that afterwards.
Thank you.
Okay? Okay. The Board of Education holds its meeting on the first and third Tuesday of the month. Board members receive their board packets on the Friday preceding. One of the members of the board, in reading his packet over the weekend, believes he's found an error in one of the proposals that the board will vote on Tuesday. And to make sure that everyone on the board is involved, he decides to hold out until the meeting and then point out the error and ask for clarification. Not a good idea. One of the things that you want to do as board members is, and sometimes people will say, well, I want everybody, like this gentleman did in the scenario, I want everybody to be able to hear the answer or know that I found this error. You can call the superintendent, call the business administrator, whatever works in with your board, and hopefully you have figured that out. Sometimes it's called the board president, sometimes it's go to the superintendent or the BA, depending on what the issue is. But to ask the question and ask for the clarification, and then, because the superintendent or the BA or whoever may need some time to be able to get back to you with an answer on that. So then they can come back to you at the meeting with the answer, and you can always say, after the first and the second motion has been made and you're in discussion, I had a question, I called Dr. Kozak and I asked him my question, and this was the answer, so that everybody does get the benefit of the answer. But you've given the administration the time to be able to make sure that they have researched the question and have the answer for you. Because not always will they have all the answers for you right here at a board meeting when a question is asked. Okay? The next one is a board member has received multiple calls complaining about the behavior of a teacher at the middle school. Although she refers each of the callers up to the chain of command, she also calls the superintendent to alert him to the issue. That's a gimme. I gave you that one because we already talked about that. So the elementary school needs a new assistant principal, and because in this case the superintendent is brand new, the board decides to help by reading all of the applications and interviewing all of the candidates for the position. Again, no, you are overseers, you provide oversight. The superintendent has the qualifications, the certification, the education, and the training, and the background to be able, to make these decisions. So the conversations that you all can be having, especially if it was a new superintendent or even if it wasn't, is to say, we're looking for a principal for an assistant principal for one of our elementary schools. What qualifications are we looking for in that person? What qualities are we looking for in that person? What kind of educational background and certification? So that you can have those questions, so when the recommendation comes to you as a board, you can ask, what made this person rise to the top? And is this person everything we had talked about when we talked about it a couple of months ago? Okay, so you're taking into consideration the recommendation of the superintendent based on the qualifications and certifications that he has. keep in mind, if anything goes awry with an appointment of a staff member that you've approved, it's the superintendent certification that's on the line. He is ultimately responsible, or she, okay? The next one is a board member is very concerned about the district math scores. She's heard a lot of talk about a numerical math program that's being advertised on television. She asked the superintendent to research the program and prepare a report comparing that program not only with the district's current math program, but also with math programs in surrounding districts or in neighboring districts. Is that something that an individual board member should ask the superintendent to do? No. The board directs the superintendent. The majority of the board provides the direction to the superintendent. Individual board members, if that were the case, your superintendent would never be able to manage the day-to-day operations of the district because everybody would be calling and saying, I'd like a report on this and I'd like a report on that. If the curriculum committee decided that they would like to ask their liaison to the curriculum committee about a math program, that would be something that the curriculum committee could vet through, though, as well, and then provide a recommendation to the board that's come down from the superintendent. Okay, the next one is a former teacher is now a board member and is often approached by teachers because she knows they're more comfortable with her than with the superintendent. She encourages them to come to her with their problems or concerns. Is that something that you should do? I'm very happy I'm seeing no, head shaking no, side to side. That's subverting the authority of the superintendent. Even your teaching staff and anybody in negotiated agreements that you have has a chain of command that they need to go through that's outlined in their negotiated agreement. All of your buildings have a building rep that somebody would go to if they had an issue first, and then it would go through the chain of command and with the teachers in terms of their contract or the administrators. Okay, and the last one is a board member knows that New Jersey state law requires that all curriculum meets the standards set. It should say in the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. In order to ensure that the curriculum meets those standards, board member decides to go to the elementary school and question teachers and administration about the implementation of the curriculum and whether they believe it meets the new standards or not. Is that something that you should do? No. The thing about being a board member is that you're a board member only when you're at a legally advertised meeting with a quorum of the board. So other than that, you're just a regular person. And so it would be like if I went to the school, one of your schools, and said, you know what, I'd like to come in, I'd like to walk around, and I'd like to see what technology you're using and things like that. I would hope that you wouldn't let me do that. I would hope that you have protocols and safety and security issues in the buildings, and I'm sure that you do. Right, sir? There you go. So that wouldn't be allowed to happen. And that's what you really have to consider yourself. If you need to be in the building for something, let the superintendent know so that he can alert the staff, because otherwise there's a lot of talking that can go back and forth about why people are in the building, and you don't want to disrupt the day-to-day operations of the school as well, or with teachers, because we know that every time somebody walks into a classroom, it disrupts learning. Okay? There is a personnel quiz on the right-hand side of your packet. The question or the answers to that personnel quiz are on the left-hand side of your packet on salmon paper. If you would like, we can go through those, or if you feel you're okay to take a look at those, we can do that too. What's your pleasure? I don't know what time it is. How am I doing with time?
Do you guys want to take a test? No, we don't want to take a test. Okay.
Okay.
We can take
so
that on our own.
So in summary, and you do have all the answers on the left-hand side. In summary, there are 4 basic functions of the board. It's policy, it's planning, oversight and appraisal, and communications. We hope that you'll respect the what and the how. So from the administration side, we hope administration will respect that the board determines the what, and that from the board side, the board respects the administration's development of the how. When you become a board member, it's like looking at your community through it's like going up in a hot air balloon. When you're a community member, a parent in the community, and you have kids in the school or grandkids in the school, nieces or nephews, best friends, kids, whatever, you tend to look at the school through a microscope. How is it impacting my child, my neighbor's child, my grandkids, my nieces or nephews? When you become a board member, it's like going up into a hot air balloon over all of Monroe Township, which happens to be very big, and I know because I drove through most of it tonight because of the detour. So it's like going up into that hot air balloon and looking down over all of Monroe Township and saying, we're responsible as a Board of Education together for all of these students that come to our schools. So it's really, you become big picture people. In terms of personnel, know what you should know and what you shouldn't be doing. This really is a team sport, being on the board. It's all about relationships and building relationships with one another, with your administrative team, the administrative team building relationships with you, and that's the best way that things can happen. And the way for that trust and that respect to happen is through communications. So we hope that this program was helpful, and I thank you for all you do for all of your students, because all of your students are all of our students. Questions?
Does anybody have questions for Ms. Friedman? They don't seem to.
Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing you again soon for a next training session. And let me know when you would like me to come back, and I'd be happy to do that. Okay?
Oh, thank you, and thank you for being here this evening with us.
Thank you very much. And it was really my pleasure to see the student presentations. That's the part that I love the most.
We have phenomenal children in our district.
You certainly do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, put this away. Okay, at this time, we will go to the presentation and public hearing of the 2018-19 school budget. Dr. Kozik, Dr. Alvick, and Mr. Gorski.
Good evening, everyone. This is our second public presentation of the budget, so we're going to make this a little bit shorter. Many of you may have heard the first part, the first presentation, so we won't go through everything the same, but we will take time to go through the really important parts, the financial parts. So basically, the presentation is a compilation of work, really, that Mr. Gorski, as our business administrator, really does the bulk of the work, but he also works in coordination with myself, Dr. Alvick, our district leadership team, who then also work with our teachers and other staff members. Of course, none of this could be done without the support of the Board of Education. We have Mrs. Kathy Kalpanovich as our board president, Mr. Stephen Ryback as our vice president. And also the chair of the Personnel Committee, Mr. Braverman. We have Miss Arminio, our chair of our Policy Committee. Mr. Chiarella, our chair of our Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation Committee. Ms. Jill DeMayo, our chair of our Curriculum Committee. And Mrs. Lang, Ms. Carino, Ms. Dawn Carino, Mr. Frank Russo, and of course, our Mr. Paul Rutsky. You moved on me, Paul. I'm used to pointing over here. Then I'm thinking, Paul, you look better now all of a sudden, but sorry. Mr. Paul Rutsky, our Jamesburg representative. Of course, our Finance Committee, Mr. Rutsky chairs our Finance Committee. Mr. Frank Russo is our vice chairperson. Mr. Ken Chiarella, Mr. Jill DeMayo are members of that committee, with Ms. Dawn Carino and Ms. Dawn Carino as our alternative, and Mrs. Kathy Kalpanovich as our ex officio, as the board president, who can sit on any and all of the committees. Our vision statement and our mission statement is clearly stated here, and again, also on our website. Our district goals, they were set out a little bit different this year than they have been in the past, and we had it set up as if you will, as a column. These are the 4 main areas with subcategories underneath each of these areas. So the first is always one of our core mission is to improve student achievement. Our second is to improve school facilities, to increase community involvement, and certainly to improve management and operations. Our board, as you heard tonight, also sets goals. And excuse me for getting closer, it's a little hard. The three goals are to evaluate and adopt a plan for enrollment growth and facility needs, to continue professional development for board members, as you saw tonight. The board will review the sampling of programs, and to improve committee communication with reports to the rest of the other board members. And you're taking that one? Okay, now I'm turning it over to Dr. Alvin. Here you go.
Thank you. So when we began the budget process way back in September and October of this school year, we had several key considerations as we were looking at the budget for next school year. One of them was we are anticipating an increase of 452 students next year. We are also looking at our aging facilities and the needs that each of our schools have each of our school buildings have at this time. We are always looking at our core content areas and all of our other content areas to ensure that we're meeting the New Jersey student learning standards and making sure that our students have the opportunities that they deserve. We are continually looking at our student and teacher ratios in all of our classrooms, and we are always keeping our eye on the tax impact for the community. So those are our key considerations as we start planning for the school budget. We begin, as I said, way back in September and October through the budget process. It begins with the budget philosophy meeting of the Board of Education, where they give us our directive of how we need to plan for the budget. We start looking at our enrollment figures, we review our staffing needs, and then we begin with budget development. So our supervisors meet with our building administrators on the content areas and fill them in on any changes or updates that are happening in the district. Our buildings look at their needs in the classrooms for materials, resources, supplies, teachers. And then each school and department develops their budget. Those budgets then come through budget defense rounds. That means that we meet with each of the school leaders or department leaders, and we review their budgets line by line. It's a very intense process, but we're trying to ensure that all of our schools, specifically across the elementary schools, because there are multiple schools at the same grade level, that they are consistent and that we're being very careful with our purchasing. Then Mr. Gorski patiently waits for the budget address from the governor to find out what our aid will be, and then we find out what our state aid award is. From there, we then bring it to the Board of Education, where we get a tentative budget adoption, and then we have this public hearing for the final budget adoption. And then along in that process, it's also presented to the county superintendent to ensure that we're following everything that we're supposed to be doing. So as we looked at our budget for next year, and I talked a lot about this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. We talked a lot about this at the last board meeting. Things that we're doing in our budget, the programs and opportunities that we're providing for our students. We have all of our curriculum is aligned to the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, formerly known as the Common Core Standards, and we review those and our curriculum documents every 5 years to ensure that we're meeting those needs. They are working documents, so if tweaks need to be made in between, we're doing that also. We are preparing our students using differentiated instruction for our PARCC assessments. We've incorporated the NWEA MAP assessments, K-8, and the teachers are using that data to plan for instruction, and next year we will be moving those assessments to the high school in the math and language arts departments. We are focusing on supporting the whole child, so we want to ensure that we're not only meeting their academic needs, but we're also supporting their emotional needs. So we're looking at programs to help do that in the classroom. We have incorporated, this is our second year of the New Jersey Seal of Biliteracy. We have 27 students graduating this year with the Seal of Biliteracy stamp on their transcripts, which means that they have been assessed in a second or third, in some cases, language, and they've earned that seal. We are continuing with our STEM or STEAM initiatives and our technology initiatives. We continue with our professional development and our professional memberships. I think, I don't know where Mr. Moraldo is, but I think we had 10 students qualified this past weekend for CMNJ, NEA? Yeah, MEA. One of the elite programs for our students, which is a wonderful accolade for us. We're continuing with our AVID programs at the middle and high school, and they are growing programs. We are getting a lot of students that are applying for those programs. Our co-curricular and athletic programs are, they're crazy. We have so many, we've already had a couple of presentations for our students because of the division and state championships that they're winning. We are looking at portable classroom units for the middle school next year, so that is definitely an impact on our budget. Our looking at high school bleachers, replacing our turf fields, HVAC equipment at some of the schools. So there's a lot going on that we took into consideration as we were going through the budget.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Alvick. Where does the money come from? Well, administration has a role in partial funding in the budget with the management of the resources and appropriations throughout the year and creating surplus from that. This year, we're pleased to say that our revenue recognition exceeded what we had in the budget, and our appropriations were less than what we had in previous year's budget. And all of that rolls over 2 years later, because of the timetable involved, to excess surplus. Dr. Kozak, Dr. Alvick, and I worked very hard in a lot of different areas in the budget to create excess surplus, maintaining a $6 million number. And that's with all of the new students, with all of the new special education needs associated with those new students, and all of the obligations that we've had to meet. That is one of the areas that we can control. Transfers from other funds is another wonderful area, because this Board of Education and boards previous created a Falcon Care ECE program from a rental engagement with an outside entity. And we designed our own business plan and model for a Falcon Care, which is before and after school care, with an added curriculum component, so the children are just learning and going to their later grades more prepared than they were before, and early childhood enrichment. In the 2 years since those programs have started, it has $1.1 million of profit, $600,000 of which is transferred into this year's budget to offset the $1.5 million cost of trailers, 10 trailers at the middle school. And that's an incredible obligation to this district. $1.5 million includes the lease price, the staffing, the computers, the wiring, the security, the utility hookups, and everything else. Tuition with the Jamesburg Board of Education. We received grades 9 through 12 from Jamesburg Board of Ed. And we have a tuition agreement that we're pleased to say Jamesburg Board of Ed was able to give us an indication that they will be increasing the tuition in Monroe. Above that, that's required by the agreement. I think it was $114,000 they're budgeting for tuition above what is required. And we've received news from Mr. Rutsky that they're also reviewing their surplus and may have an additional sum of money that they have to deliberate and to transfer to Monroe to reduce that obligation. And I'm very proud to say that last year was the first year that that agreement showed success, where the monies that Monroe collected from Jamesburg for tuition were more than their actual tuition charge. And that difference got applied against the indebtedness. Transportation fees, miscellaneous income, extraordinary income. State aid is only 3.12% of the budget. Federal aid is less than 1%. That's where the money comes from. Of course, taxes is 88% of all revenues, approximately. There's two types of state aid: equalization aid and categorical aid. Monroe Township has not ever been eligible for equalization aid, which is designed to support the lion's share of a district's budget, which is your adequacy budget, the majority of which is mandated from the state of New Jersey. The second part is categorical aid. That includes debt service aid, transportation aid, security aid, special education aid. Our transportation department is the most efficient in the county and among the highest in the state for efficiency ratings with our tiering system. We got an extra award in that area this year. But total state aid is only 3.42% of our total revenues to support the budget. And although there was some good news that Governor Murphy is going to fully fund the funding formula for school districts over a 4-year phase-in period, the very disappointing component with that is that the growth limitations on the budget still remain in place. And that costs us about $5 million. Growth limitations are like a shower water restrictor for revenues coming from the state. The state doesn't have the revenues, so they restrict what schools get through growth limitations. And that's the area that we've been fighting and addressing with our legislators to get removed. General fund state aid, we will receive ultimately a 41.9% increase once it's fully funded. And the phase-in is over 4 years. This year we got approximately $350,000 of additional aid. But when you net what was lost with debt service aid because of the maturation of our amortization schedules, we really didn't gain much at all. We did gain much in terms of student enrollment. Over the last 9 years, we've gained 1,683 students, a 30% increase, while our state aid compared to 9 years ago is a $2.1 million decrease, 30% decrease. 30% more kids, 30% less aid than 9 years ago. That's an outrageous statistic. Where does the money go? Over 60% of appropriations are directly related to instruction. Cost savings from shared services. I encourage everyone to visit our website. We have a special budget section that has a plethora of budget information beyond what is required, which is the user-friendly budget. We go much farther than that. And take a look at the shared service schedule that we have there. We have very impressive jointures, shared services with the municipality, joint insurance funds, where we have squeezed every dollar out of this budget that's possible. One of the biggest areas is in health insurance. From hard-nosed negotiations between our broker and I with Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is a very competitive health offering, we've saved $1.3 million. This schedule, this chart shows what I believe to be Monroe's finest fiscal best practice, which is our health insurance rates. I would compare our health insurance increases over this period of time with not only anybody in the public sector, but private sector as well. What factors influence the tax rate? Most importantly in the tax rate computation is state aid. If Monroe only received the amount of equalization aid that South Brunswick gets, it would result in a tax reduction to this community that would make your head spin. Unfortunately, we don't have that. Fund balance is one area that we can manage. A favorable consequence is that we have increasing ratables through this township, which lowers the tax rate, but it also puts stress on facilities that have been showing that they're not meeting the needs of our growing enrollment. And the increased student enrollment effect on appropriations. The more students you need, you have to appropriate more money to care for them. Some special education programs, for example, require pupil-teacher ratios of 8 students to 1 teacher. You know, you pick up a 9th student and you're adding a 2nd teacher. Those are very costly programs, and all of our students' needs are met very well here. Net bottom line, this hasn't changed since the tentative budget. In 2016, we had a 4.5-cent increase, which was $138 on an average assessed home. 2017, it dropped to 3.5-cent increase, or $108 on an average assessed home. 2018, it was less than a 1 penny increase, or $27.85 on an average assessed home. And this year, going to cap, not using the bank cap, which is available and it's left on the table for next year if this board should so choose to use it, we have a consequence of 1.7 cents or $52 on an average assessed home. When I became the BA 8 years ago, my predecessor told me if you introduce a budget to the board with anything less than a 7-cent increase, it's a page turner. It's going to be automatically approved. 4.5 cents, 3.5 cents, less than a penny, and 1.7 cents. That is a remarkable address of the tax concerns that this community faces here by the board by acting in a very efficient, fiscally responsible manner. This budget provided enough resources as we were out of contract that no matter what came out of negotiations as a result, we had the wherewithal to meet it. And I want to thank everyone for their contributions to this budget, especially the Finance Committee, Dr. Kozak, especially Dr. Alvik, who worked very closely with the principals and the supervisors, all the way down to the teachers level in the classrooms to create individual school zero-based budgets.
Do you have a resolution? Yes. Okay.
Madam Board President and members of the Monroe Township Board of Education, it is recommended that the members of the Monroe Township Board of Education approve the following amounts and resolution for the 18-19 final budget. Be it resolved by the Monroe Township Board of Education that the 18-19 general fund budget be adopted in the amount of $117,715,842, and the general fund local tax levy in the amount of $101,353,868, and a special revenue fund in the amount of $1,192,974, and a debt service budget in the amount of $11,397,213, and a debt service local tax levy in the amount of $10,970,185, whereby the 18-19 budget totals $130,306,029. And whereas the Monroe Township Board of Education has been notified of state aid amounts, and whereas such state aid amounts are, for the 18-19, the categorical special education aid is $2,434,917. The 18-19 categorical security aid is $103,764. The 18-19 categorical transportation aid is $1,096,417, and the 18-19 debt service aid is $427,023. And whereas the Monroe Township Board of Education has estimated a state aid amount pursuant to application, and for the 18-19, the estimated extraordinary aid is $350,674. And whereby policy 6471 and NJAC 6A23A 7.3 provides that the Board of Education shall establish in the annual school budget a maximum expenditure amount that may be allotted for such travel and expense reimbursement for the 18-19 school year. Now therefore be it resolved that the Monroe Township Board of Education hereby establishes the school district travel maximum for the 18-19 school year at the tentative sum of $158,422. And be it further resolved that the school business administrator shall track and record these costs to ensure that the maximum amount is not exceeded. And be it resolved that the members of the Board of Education, Township of Monroe, authorize and approve a withdrawal from the capital reserve account in the amount of $890,800 to fund Fund 12 Construction Services, account 12-000-400-450, for the emergent replacement of HVAC equipment and a boiler system at Brookside School, which project number is included in the district's long-range facilities plan and has been assigned an approved project number of 23-3290-050-18-1000. And whereas as a result of the extraordinary budget efficiencies created by the administrative stewardship of the budget, which provided alternative resources in the 18-19 budget, such as the transfer of $600,000 of Falcon Care early childhood enrichment retained earnings to offset instructional trailer costs, and a fiscal best practice of very effectively controlling escalating healthcare costs, the board has not exceeded the maximum spending authority and furthermore has not used the $600,000 of bank cap created in the 16-17 school year. Now therefore let it be resolved that the superintendent of schools and the business administrator board secretary file the required documents with the executive county superintendent.
Motion?
Make a motion.
Second?
I will second that motion.
Mrs. Lang, Mr. Rutsky? Are there any comments or questions from the board members? Mr. Russo?
Regarding the fair funding, I'm just wondering why we wasted so much time with the legislators when we have, I think we got more money out of Mr. Rutsky and Jamesburg. Huh? The other question is, regarding the health insurance, I think we're spending about 20 million, am I right?
A little over 20 million, yes,
Little
sir.
over 20. My only concern is that I understand that Mr. Gorski is the only one that negotiates that. Is that true?
No, that is not true.
Okay.
I work in concert with the board's health insurance broker, and I present periodic updates to the board's finance committee and the board in my weekly confidential updates throughout the budget season on health insurance.
Okay. So it's just yourself and the broker, but there's nobody from the school, from the district that works with you on that, that negotiates, that sits there and meets with the broker and talks with the broker?
I also have had assistance from our human resource director in the past. The assistant business administrator helps me quite a bit.
But I mean, is it a practice or just when you need them?
It's a fiscal best practice, I can tell you that.
Okay, I see control issues there, but to have one person with such, negotiating with a broker in such a large account, it would be good if there were at least 3 people that were involved from the district.
Are you dissatisfied with the result?
I can't say. If there were 3 people, maybe we would get a different answer. I don't know.
Anyone else have a comment, question? Ms. Arminio?
Okay, and since after our training, I didn't ask this question beforehand, but we were talking about on the average assessed home. Can you give me the average assessed home that you're going by? Sorry, I didn't ask this sooner. And I should know the answer to the question, but.
The average assessed home, as you're aware, changes
Right.
every year.
Right.
And the information furnished to me from the Township Business Administrator indicates that this year's average assessed home in Monroe Township is $315,299.
And that's what we're using the $52.44 basis that.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? Okay, that's good, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, then at this time, I'm going to open it up to the public for any comments or questions on the budget, and it's just on the budget, because that's what the motion on the floor is, for the budget.
Mark Klein, 7 Crenshaw Court. I know you missed me. This will probably be the last meeting I come to, which I'll explain later. I think you should also tie into this the referendum. We know what goes on in this state. It's pitiful. It's amazing what emails that are opened tell, the story that it tells. And I want to get one thing straight now. Ms. Kapanowicz and Mr. Rybeck, you had in an email that the information that Ron Post wrote, the people at Regency, was based on the misinformation from Mark Klein. That is a lie. I read, while I was in Florida, I read his letter.
Is this
None of that.
Is this in regard to the budget?
Please don't, let me just finish, it does.
Okay.
None of it relates to the facts that I gave him. In fact, there are some board members that I CC them or BCC them so they see it. So that's number one. Number two, the ad hoc committee. Now, that was supposed to help lead all this for the referendum and all. I show up for the second meeting, and a guy who never shows up at a meeting badmouths me, is backed by Ms. Kapanovich, and I walked out and I quit. Those of you know that I have been fighting for money myself since about 2010, 2011, with no backing from this board at all. When you ask in some of the meetings that I've seen, you ask, well, how did we get into this situation? You had a superintendent before who, and this I got from very reliable sources, did not want to get involved with new schools or referendums. So right away, you're behind the eight ball. In 2011, when I served on this board, you had a consultant come in that was going to handle redistricting. And I pointed out at that time, being that I go to the planning board and I'm on the zoning board, of what the new projected developments were going to be. That wasn't even taken into account, and I don't even know if they ever did the redistricting. The point I'm getting to is the one who's responsible for the problem that we have now is not the superintendents. The superintendents, as we found out earlier, the superintendents are led by the board and the board president. It's up to you to set goals for your superintendent. Why wasn't this done after 2011? Ms. Kapanovich, you served most of those years. Steve Rybeck was there 1 year. Doug Poy was there 1 year. Why wasn't that handled then? You wouldn't have the headache that you have now. As far as the comment made against Mr. Gorski, the knowledge that I have of Mr. Gorski from day one when I was on the board and everything that he's accomplished since is unbelievable. He should have been a magician. And I, as a resident and an ex-board member, take offense to Mr. Russo questioning what Mr. Gorski does. Because whatever he does is what's best for the residents, the taxpayers, and whatever he's able to jury-rig to get us better prices. My time is probably up. I do want to say that I get a kick out of these kids. Not only the little ones in the paintings, but the reckless society of the way these kids can write and the way these kids can speak. And that is because of our teachers. Don't clap. That's because of our teachers and the parents. See, the dummies that we have in Trenton think that money, I have to go this way, that money makes for better education. They finally have found out that, I'm going to stop now, that they finally found out that money does not buy better education. It's parent involvement. So I will finish up later on, but I appreciate you giving me the time, and thank you very much.
Prakash Parab, 33 Dana Drive. This is all related to the budget. Because you know that state aid is related to budget. And last month I spoke about it for 3 minutes. Today what I'm requesting is the entire budget, what is going to be decided, depends on how our legislatures are going to lobby. And finally, it is the Senate President, Sweeney, the Speaker of the House, Coughlin, and Governor Murphy sit together and decide what happens. So I request each board member to please write to these three people plus our legislatures. Call them, lobby them. I also request the residents to call all these three people plus our legislatures, because next month it will be finalized. Few millions will count, okay? So that is the request. The next is Naturally, this again relates to the budget. Because when you come with the referendum, you have to spend money, isn't it? So, I'm sure that you all are thinking of next referendum, you send out the survey. What we are requesting is, in the next referendum, please consider new middle school, expansion of high school, and full-day kindergarten. That is very important. And lastly, again, budget. The teacher's contract. You know, it all relates to the budget, how much we are going to negotiate and pay. So I'm sure you'll have closed session today, so request that, hope it ends today, and you have final decisions on that, so we go happy home. Lastly, again, this is not related to budget, but one thing what the parents are asking is, the public forum is always comes to at 8 o'clock, 8:15, and it's related to agenda. Who decides about the agenda? The parents come here. They want to ask questions. They cannot stay here till 10:30 when your closed session is over and you ask for the public forum. So I request that the parents are working here. They have their children. They cannot stay till 11 o'clock or 10:30. So request is, agenda is also what the public, parents have any concerns, they should ask questions about. So I request you all to consider that. And I don't know, I didn't see about Dr. Kozak's negotiation in the agenda at all. So like to have answer on that. Not now, at least I will stay here end of the public session. And I want to answer on that. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak to the budget?
Anthony Prezioso, 8 Equestrian Way. Michael, how many iPads are we ordering from the budget?
I believe the answer to that is 2,400. Is that correct, Dr. Alec?
Those are all new.
Yes, sir.
What about the old ones?
The old ones are going to be put together and sold in a method allowable with procurement laws, which means we'll be putting the used units out to bid to the highest bidder on those units.
How much are the new units?
Dr. Alec, do you have that information handy?
$394 each. Oh, our finance chairperson.
And how much could we get, the last time we sold our iPads, what did we get per iPad? My point to that is,
I don't recall the answer figuratively, but I do know that the sale amount was enough that it covered the first of the 3 years lease obligations on the new devices.
okay. Recently, the 2% cap on homeowners insurance disappeared. And I'm pretty sure homeowners insurance for a lot of us went up 30% this year. Mine alone went up $800 for 1 year. Maybe consider keeping some of these old iPads, because I know of plenty that are almost still brand new. And that's a big savings. If we could save 30, 40, 50% of those iPads, we're going to save a lot of money, maybe enough to get some of those trailers. I have a question for Ms. Kapanowitz. Was there recently a meeting about security with Linda Greenstein?
We were supposed to have a meeting with not only Linda Greenstein, but Sweeney and Benson and D'Angelo, and they canceled out on us because of another commitment in Trenton.
Was that supposed to be at the rec center? Did you have a meeting at the
No.
rec center?
No.
Who was invited to this meeting that you put
It
together?
was the Board of Education, I believe me and Steve, and the administrators, and our legislators.
Okay. And something concerning the budget and contracts. Do we have a superintendent's contract?
There is no action on this evening's agenda for a superintendent's contract. The board has not reappointed him for another term, and his current contract expires on June 30th.
Okay, well, if you don't give him a contract, if I were him, I'd take us to court. You're going to cost this district $200,000, $300,000. Right now, he's supposed to get his contract. His April 1st was the deadline for the board, and they didn't do it.
It
All you're
wasn't-
doing
it-
is costing us money. You're stalling. Not only are you stalling, this has been going on for quite a while, where it's all set up, where you want an interim superintendent, which will be Dory, and you're going to stall that. You're going to stall getting a new superintendent, and she's going to be the superintendent. This is what you want. You need to give this man a contract. There were 700 people that signed the petition to keep him. So all you're doing is you're holding out, and you're going to cost this board a lot of money. Thank you.
Andy Peluri, 16 St. James Street. I just had to come up and say something. I'm assuming that there are checks and balances in terms of what is expected of the superintendent. It's not the president's prerogative to make a decision about the renewing of the contract. Is that correct?
It is the Board of Education, the non-conflicted Board of Education, who does the evaluation of the superintendent every year.
Thank you. And I commend Mr. Grosky for the work that he's doing for the township. And I know that he's a very honorable person. I have dealt with him, and I really respect what you're doing for the township. The last but not least is, I think one of my friends, Prakash Parab, suggested that the board members write to the governor's office requesting for more funding. While I do encourage that, I don't think it's just on the Board of Education members to do that. It's incumbent on all of us to do that. And some of us do it publicly and put it on the Facebook, and some of us do it privately. But still, I think all of us should be pushing for this collectively together. And I really hope that this meeting is not going to be any walkouts, any boycotts. At the end of the day, we would, as the citizens of the township, we want to see some stuff resolved moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ira Nelson at 87 Crescent Way. I listened with great attention to Mr. Gorski's presentation. If I'm understanding this correctly, over 9 years, we've had a 30% increase in students and a 30% decrease in state aid. Does anybody see a problem with that? I mean, again, you're going about it the same old way, trying to reach legislators, state senators, state assembly people. In 9 years, I think the results are in. It really hasn't worked. You have an option, which is a legal suit. Why you folks do not take that as a solution or as a remedy or to attempt to do something regarding that, I just cannot seem to follow. I just don't understand the reasoning and the logic behind continuing to go down the same old path and getting the same old results, where we have another path, a legal remedy where we can do something. Can somebody explain that to me? What is the reluctance of this board to sue, as many districts have? This is a flawed system. We all know that. Everybody in the world knows that. And we're sitting this and just taking it on the chin. Then you come to the taxpayers and say, we have a referendum, we need schools. Everybody agrees we need schools. The issue isn't that we need the schools. The issue is who's going to be paying for it. And if it's always the taxpayers, you're going to go up for that bond issue again. And guess what? Surprise, it won't pass. Why can we not take legal action against the state?
We could take legal action against the state.
Then why
but
haven't we done it?
The state says that we are giving our students a thorough and efficient education. They also say that, that we are over adequacy. So as long as we're over adequacy and we give our students more than different districts in New Jersey.
Kathy, this can be challenged legally.
We could challenge.
I am not a lawyer. I am not a lawyer. Any lawyer can find a million things that they can do. We have very solid grounds, along with many other districts. I think Dr. Kozak had mentioned at a previous meeting that he was doing something with some other districts. And it has to be done legally. This whole thing has to be overturned. We're dealing with something that is flawed. is not fair and is not right. Everybody knows that. And yet, we're just taking it on the chin and saying, hey, that's okay. We'll see what we could do. Mr. Gorski will work his magic. To be honest with you, I would hope Mr. Gorski does not have to work his magic. Let's get what we're due, okay? It's as simple as that, and as soon as possible. I would hope that there would be some consideration as to some legal form of action that we can take.
We have looked at that in the past. We continue to look at that until we have a reason to sue, and we don't at this point, just to say that.
You're telling me he just gave you the reason.
According to the attorneys that we have contacted, we do not have a reason to sue.
I can't
We
believe
do not
that.
have cause to sue.
I cannot believe that. It defies common sense. It defies logic. It makes no sense. I mean, look at Brown versus the Board of Ed. They brought a suit and they changed. That was the only way that whole system could be changed. And when something is unfair and not right, you have a legal remedy in this country. And basically, that's what we should be doing. The path that we're on, for 9 years, it's unbelievable. You heard what he said, and you know those statistics. Please look into that. Let's do something, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Phoenicia Patel, 15 El Dorado Way. Good evening. The teachers' contracts are related to the budget, and I'm a freshman, and I'm here to express the impact these teachers in these districts have had on me. I've been in this district since kindergarten, and actually my kindergarten teacher was here today. And I know the teachers in this district have had an unimaginable impact on me and my classmates. Let me begin during my pre-high school years. I had been inspired and taught well by these teachers. But beyond that, they became people I could trust with my problems, not only those educationally, but those personally. They took time out of their busy lives to support me and my fellow classmates at non-school related events. I worried that when I got to the high school, the teachers would be too busy to give me the same level of support. I was pleasantly surprised to see that more of my teachers encouraged me to tell them about these activities and these events, so they could attend, and if they couldn't attend, they told other teachers about it. Many of these teachers have other activities they could run and could be at, yet they support these students. Without contracts, these teachers are still supportive of us. Why have they still not gotten what they deserve? These teachers inspired me to be more active, and many of them are the reason I'm here today. They take time out of their lives and out of their families' lives. I implore you to give these hardworking teachers what they deserve after so long. Why is there a delay? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the budget? You've spoken to the budget, Mr. Klein, so we'll wait until then.
I had some answers for what the gentleman said. I can do it later.
You could do it later. Thank you. Okay, since there's no more, we will close the budget public. I know. And if there's no more comments or questions from the board, I know Ms. Arminio is.
She's good.
She's good. She'll let us know. We'll take a roll call.
Thank you. Mrs. Arminio.
Ask slowly.
Your timing is perfect, yeah, just skip hers.
Take your time, Madam. We were just doing a roll call on the final budget adoption.
That's correct.
Starting
Yes.
with Mrs. Arminio.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Braverman.
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella.
Yes.
Mrs. DeMayo.
Yes.
Mrs. Lang.
Yes.
Mrs. Carino.
Yes.
Mr. Ryback.
Yes.
Mr. Russo.
No.
Mr. Rutsky.
Yes.
And Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Yes.
Madam Board President, motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's never difficult, it's never easy to compile a budget for our district, but we do the best we can with adding all our new students into our district. So we go to the student board members' reports, and I believe they're all out today with different activities that are going on towards the end of the school year. So we hope to see them in May. And I'll go to the board president's report. And I think this will go over pretty well. But I'm very happy to announce that the Board of Education and the Monroe Township Education Association signed a memorandum of agreement yesterday in regard to the settlement of a new 3-year contract. And I'd like to thank the MTEA President, Beth Ann Osbach. I think I pronounced it right this time, for working with me to get this accomplished. It is my belief that the MTEA will be holding discussions next week, and then after a 48-hour time hold, they will vote on this and hopefully ratify the contract. And after it's been ratified by the union, it will come to the Board of Education at the next board meeting on May 9th for discussion and approval by the members of the Board of Education. While this has taken up much more time than I would have liked or anticipated, we can get this over in a couple of weeks, and hopefully we can all get back to working together to do what we are supposed to be doing, educating our children. It was also very important to get this contract in place before we move on with some of our other priorities in our district. And once we get the contract approved, we can get on to the next important issue, which is getting a referendum on the ballot so that we can address the facility needs of our growing student population. So I look forward to ratifying the contract by both parties and then moving on with a referendum. It's good news. And the second thing I have is, as we just heard from the New Jersey School Board rep, it's time to start the superintendent evaluation. According to statute, we have to do this every year. And this year, there's a new requirement that it's signed before July 1st, or we lose points on our QSEC score. So at this point, it's up to Dr. Kozak to, you have to start the process by going into the school board's website and doing your part. And then once that happens, we will be contacted as board members, and all the non-conflicted board members will then have to the opportunity to continue with our part of the evaluation. And as we move forward, I'll continue to give updates to the public as to where we stand. Is that good with you?
Sure.
Okay. Absolutely. Great. So, committee reports. Are there any committees that need to report this evening? Ms. Arminio? Mr. Mayo?
The curriculum met today. We discussed, we are due for new math textbooks, and I use the word textbook loosely because we are getting ebooks. Sue Gasco, the math supervisor, engaged all the teachers in this process. They looked at Pearson math textbooks and McGraw-Hill textbooks, and the teachers were put into committees. They evaluated the pros and the cons. They also did a 1-month pilot. They decided to go with the McGraw-Hill textbooks. And they will be, we will be getting a 7-year contract for that. We also went through the summer reading list, and in the high school, grades 9 through 12, they changed half of the titles. This is a whole process that our LAL supervisor goes through. She looks at the school library journal, she talks to the librarian, she looks at books that get awards, and so that the students are not getting the same lists every year. So that should be coming out in the middle of May.
The next thing we talked about is Classroom Alexa. There is two teachers in Brookside one teacher in Brookside and one teacher in Patty Mill Lake.
I think so.
Okay, who are piloting Classroom Alexa. That's similar to the Alexa that people have in their house. The purpose of Classroom Alexa is to help help with classroom management. Some of the committee members from the curriculum went to see the pilot that was going on, because it's really hard to conceptualize how Alexa can manage a classroom. And it was really interesting because the teacher can program things into Classroom Alexa at certain times that can transition the students from one, project task to another, while the teacher's free to work in small groups. It also can well, that's basically it. It's a little hard to describe unless you see it.
Why don't you bring one here?
What?
Bring one here for a demonstration.
For a demonstration? Okay.
You could manage the board.
It was really interesting to see it being used, because I had no idea how it could manage the classroom. And the kids were very receptive to her when she spoke. So when she stopped and asked them to pay attention, they all stopped doing what they were doing, and they looked up, as if looking for more instruction. So we are looking to expand that pilot next year for any teachers who are interested. We also had, the last thing we talked about was the learning management system. We've had parents come up and talk about how their students have each teacher has a different way of managing homework and communicating with students. Some teachers use Google Classroom, some use Wiki Pages, some use Apple Classroom, some use e-backpacks. So Dory and her committee looked at all of these, trying to figure out which one would be best to have a uniform classroom management, a learning management system for the whole district. And they chose Schoolology, and this will be a phased-in approach. We'll have half the teachers using it next year, and then the year after they'll what?
At the high school.
At the high school. And the following year, the other half of the teachers will learn. The good thing about Schoolology is that it can also work with our own Genesis, and so those two programs can speak. And that was pretty much it.
Mr. Ryback.
Thank you. First, I'd like to catch everyone up on a meeting that was held on February 10th, the New Jersey School Board Legislative Committee. We had a guest speaker, Diane Pasculi, who's the Department of Ed Chief of Public Affairs, and she spoke on career and tech programs. And basically, on County Vocational Schools Overview, which was given, a task force was formed to look into students who are not college-bound. Career and Tech Ed today prepares students for college and careers. It must integrate high-level academics. Students who work on auto mechanics must know how to analyze problems using computers. Superintendent of Burlington County noted that they have worked with over 400 employers to get information and input for programs. They also use virtual technology in the classrooms and have partnership with colleges. On some other items, there was talk about consolidation of districts as a means of cost cutting. There have been some movement in the legislature to remove the cap on superintendent salaries. The federal government, which was noted, spends less than 1 cent of every dollar on school aid. I guess we could use a little bump in that one. Cadillac tax was delayed until January 2022. The Personnel Committee met and, as you can see in the agenda, supported bringing Dawn Graciano before the board tonight for a consideration as a principal of Applegarth School. I have also a note on May 22nd in the evening, New Jersey School Boards is sponsoring a regional advocacy training for all BOE members in districts that are chronically underfunded, and that will be hosted right here. There'll be more information coming for that. The BG&T committee, I chaired that night, and with Mr. Chiarelli's permission, I'll summarize that meeting. There's notice regarding property adjacent Barclay Brook School. Administration provided a copy of a letter from the owner of 352 Buckaloo Avenue, the neighboring property to Barclay Brook School. He's applying for a New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection wetlands delineation to facilitate development upon his property. An aerial view of the site was reviewed to show the proximity of the existing residence to the school property. Administration will inquire further to determine what type of development the property owner has planned and communicate the same to the committee. Brookside HVAC project bid and award schedule. Administration noted that due to the demands put upon in-house legal counsel for Oprah response that review of legal front-end bid documents has not yet been completed, and therefore the bid schedule should be modified. The committee agreed with adjusting the bid opening date until May 8th, the day before the May 9th board meeting, and the board will be notified via email prior to the meeting of the bid results so they can be adequately prepared to vote on the matter on May 9th. It was also noted that since the president has threatened tariffs, various manufacturers have issued notices that the cost of materials will be increasing, and this will likely have an effect on the bids and project budget. Alyssa's Law, the Assembly Bill A764. Administration provided a handout with details on the forthcoming bill that requires security upgrades, panic alarms, and red emergency lights at the schools. The bill honors former Woodcliff Lake teen Alyssa Alhadef, who died in the mass shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Administration will provide additional information on specifics as to what is required once the bill is finalized into law. Administration noted that with township-wide walkie-talkie system employed at all schools and in our school buses, that a direct link to the police department is currently in place. CPSI playground inspection. Administration provided an overview of the playground inspection process and reviewed reports for the most recent inspections. Eric North Safety Grant. Administration has completed grant applications, training, and has the potential to be awarded a grant of $30,000 to $40,000 for safety upgrades. The committee indicated they would support a resolution at the next board meeting authorizing administration to submit a grant application, and that the priority preference for safety grant projects are safety film on glazing at school entrances and safety surfacing improvements with special needs playground at Barclay Brook School. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryback. Is there any questions for Mr. Ryback? Okay, any other committees? Mr. Rutsky?
Finance Committee?
Yes.
Okay, so obviously, one of our main topics at the Finance meeting, I'm happy to say, was our final budget presentation to us for review, which obviously we just reviewed here with everybody, and it was successful, so we were a happy committee. We were grateful to Mr. Gorski and his team for their work, and now that that's been passed, another school year can be had. But we also talked about the iPad one-to-one initiative that we agreed to, and to give you the numbers, it's $2,400 that we're contracting to buy. The cost of each iPad is $394 in and of itself. We're getting a really good new cover, a Logitech Rugged Combo, it's called, and it has a keyboard on it. So the kids are going to finally be able to type on a keyboard for their iPad, and I think all 2,400 of them should find it a little easier to use. So all in, the price tag is $1,424,040. That includes warranties, professional development, and as well as the cover and keyboard. So it's $593.35 per iPad for the next 3 years. And as was discussed, they will be scrubbing, cleaning, and then putting up for bid the old round of iPads, and whatever money they can be had from that will go towards the first year's payment. And remember, those were used for 3 years by high school students. So realistic expectations as to what their value really is helpful.
We'll find out, right.
We'll find out soon, but we'll get whatever we can for them. And that's simple. That concludes my report.
Ms. Arminio?
Just in the past, I have a question about the iPads, and I don't know if the finance chair can answer it, but in the past, I know that there was some discussion about other technologies. And when was the iPad technology
I can
settled?
answer, if you'd let me.
Okay. Sure, Mr.
Sure.
Budsky.
So I have a whole schedule as to how this progressed. And I was at the first meeting was October 3rd, Technology Committee meeting here in the library. I'll call it a library. October 4th, the staff had a chance to talk about what their needs were and put that in, and they came, obviously the top 4 or 5 needs were internet access, of course, well-supported Wi-Fi chipset, obviously they wanted to be ease of use, substantial battery life, and then durability, which is where the cover came into play. So from there, November 14th was a technology expo where everybody was invited, but for better or worse, only 29 people responded. They had a chance to review the HP tablet, the iPad, and a back atlas, which I'm not exactly sure what that is, but 12 people liked it, but that wasn't enough. On January, we did have, they held a teacher pilot of the iPad versus the HP tablet, and the majority of teachers did end up preferring and staying with the iPad device of choice. So that was the process. Hopefully that helps.
Yep.
All right.
Any other committees?
Yes. Did you want to ask the question? No. Okay, I'm prepared. We've had ongoing committees since April 18th, committee meetings regarding school security. And I can assure you that we have had discussions and, like I said, ongoing. I'm going to also give a quick rundown. After the February meeting of the, and a PowerPoint presentation at the high school where the community was involved, we had our first meeting on Wednesday, April 18th. We asked the administrators and our school security officer to give us something in writing about an idea of what policy, how the policy should work. On March 6th, we had our first policy meeting for this, and the meeting was to discuss, originally, it was publicized to discuss policy 7440 and 7441. What happened at late in that afternoon on the same day, we were given an email that changed the agenda and a new policy proposed of 7446. So at that meeting, which was a public meeting, by the way, there was a member of the public there, we were just learning about that policy, and 5 members of the Board of Education were there, and 3 members were a little disappointed at the language of the policy, and we asked for a written endorsement and authorization for these things. After all, this is not really an education policy that we can rely on our teachers and administrators and everything. This is a serious policy, and the parents are taking it seriously, the community's taking it seriously, the Board of Education, the administrators are taking it seriously, and the committee as well. So as you can imagine, we understand the urgency of this policy. However, we want to make sure we get it right, since it's really introducing deadly force into our schools. So we received originally the policy, and again, we felt we had a lot of questions, and we felt that it was inadequate because it wasn't really clear. It talked about the type of weapons and handguns. It also talked about security functions assigned by the administration, And, let's see, they talked about insurance, which we really didn't get into a lot of discussion about of costs, because right now we want to make sure we have the priority is the safety of our children and the safety of our schools, administrators, teachers, and anyone who is on our school grounds. So we had another policy meeting on the 14th, March 14th, again, understanding the urgency. We got yet a second report that was put together, and that was called Armed Security RPO Carry Information. The majority of the board, or there was some discussion as to that carry information not really being, again, a procedural or operational information in order for us to develop an adequate policy. We tasked the security and Mr. Gorski, because right now he's in charge of this, the security in the school, school safety specialist. I don't think he's considered a specialist. School safety specialist?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we asked that we would get a authorization from them as to what their recommendations are, what their choices are, and we asked for it to be signed and delivered at our next meeting. Again, we have not really received a signed document that gives us operational and procedural things, in our opinion, to get a full policy. We then received on Friday we received regulations. So it's still, in my opinion, I mean, we put it to the board because everybody is very anxious about getting some kind of policy. But there are members of the committee that still feel that this needs a lot of work. But because of the urgency, it's on the agenda, but I would ask the board to consider that we have a lot of work to do on this policy. And that's it.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Since I'm also on the committee, I just have to say a little about my background. I've done similar work at the United Nations for 35 years, planning and supporting security roles throughout the world for UN field offices. And I wasn't happy to see what was given to us, mainly because the first document that we received, the Armed Security RPO Carry Information, was basically a document that described what took place during the meeting at the high school. When you had, I don't know how many people went, I hear anywhere from 100 to 200, but anyway, you had this meeting, and that document, all it did was describe that. It doesn't say who the document's from. It's not addressed to anybody. So I found it to be totally inadequate. Plus, the format and everything wasn't really sufficient. So we asked for a document to justify the decision that was being made, because at that meeting, you were making a decision to arm the current in-house security staff. So we were given another document, which was the school security plan. Again, no name who it's from, and no name who it's to. So if somebody can't put their name on a document, I mean, I don't feel very confident in supporting it. It describes some meetings that took place. It describes who was present at the meetings. But in terms of the administration here, it says we learned from the following from their meetings. But it was actually the administration who conducted the meetings and held the meetings. It makes certain promises in the document. A lot of them are financial. And that was the reason for deciding on this option. So what we wanted, again, going back to the accountability, like negotiating insurance rates, somebody should be accountable at the end of the day, not just hear a story. we drafted a sample document, a sample memo, which would come from the administration, and it would simply outline the justification for making the decision they made, that you guys made. Now, before this policy was going to be brought to the committee, we expected to receive that, because we were promised at the policy committee that we would receive this signed, and we haven't received it. So I'm a little surprised at that, because if nobody in the administration will step up, no one's stepping up to say, this is why we made a decision, we would like your support and approval of it, then I don't think it's ready for the board to approve. We received an email, and it was a memo from the chief of police, and attached to an email. And even in his memo, he says, at the meeting, it was announced that there are 9 retired police officers on your security staff. You assured the audience of parents and residents the BOE policy to arm our school security personnel who are retired police officers would be expeditiously considered by the board. So the decision was made. It was already made, and that's all we asked for was justification for making that decision based on the promises that we were told. And all of those promises were put in that memo, that sample memo. So that's what we're waiting for. And I think the board should want that.
I just like to finish up by saying that, again, we understand the urgency, and it is not a question of whether the board or the members of the committee want to arm or not our security officials. I think everyone was in agreement. There was a consensus about that. But the question is, does the district just simply push through any policy, or a policy that, especially a policy that introduces guns in our schools, or a thoughtful preparation for a crisis event? And that is really my biggest concern. I would like that we as a board have thoughtful consideration for moving on with these policies and get it done right. So again, it's not that any member of the committee thought not to do it. It's just that we wanted the policy to make sense and be put forward. And also, because we are getting a recommendation from the administration and people who are in security, we would like to know how that is to be, and the operationally. Because once we put a policy together, and there is also a regulation that, again, the regulation really was not discussed at the meeting. We only got it on Friday, so the committee had no opportunity to take a look at the regulation. We would just like it to be right. Thanks.
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes, so, Ms. Arminio, I'm sorry. Does K under the superintendent's report on the board action, is that the policy that you're talking about? Okay, so basically what you're saying is, what's the thing that's giving the policy committee, or certain members of the policy committee, reservations, is that the administration is putting forward this policy through policy, but they're not owning it. They refuse to own it.
Yeah. I would like the school security program to be given to us in a way that we know where it came from. We know what the actual operational and procedural recommendations are, and the kind of policy that we really want to put through. And we need someone to take ownership of it, because it's not something the board can create or the committee can create. It's something we can approve, and we want to approve it in language that I think is appropriate.
So, during all the meetings we had, a lot of promises were made. Some of them were put on the document they provided us, but again, there's no name, so there's no accountability here. At the end of the day, like the iPad project of a number of years ago when we lost so much money, nobody's accountable. Nobody you can't point the finger at anybody. Like Mecca when we lost so much money, nobody's accountable. The board voted on it. We want the same thing here. Promises were made. A lot of them are financial. Basically, they're saying that the solution that they chose beats all others by far because it's less expensive. there are a lot of things they put in here as promises which are not real either, because, I'll give you an example. They talk about psychological tests, that every police officer every security officer will have a psychological test. And what we find out is that when you start working at the police department, you have a psychological exam, and that's when you start, and you never get another one since. When you retire, you don't have one. You come into the school because you were a former retired police officer. So, for example, our director said that the last one he had was in 1987. So, this thing really needs to be done more professionally. And that was one of the things we also considered, that since we don't have in-house experience, that maybe we should look outside. But if they're selling us on the price, if that's the promise they're making, then we want it in writing. That's the way we look at it.
Can I ask a question?
Mr. Rutsky, yes.
All right, because I'm maybe a little not as familiar, but on policies as a whole, just talk general policies. Let's talk about a homework policy. Is Dory's name as the curriculum or the one that's running the homework assessment? Does her name end up on the policy itself when it gets made official?
Well,
I'm just curious,
All
because
right.
I don't think any policies, I don't think you can have people's names associated with them, because people change. Presidents change, superintendents change, someday Board of Ed members change. I don't understand your
Yeah, I'll
direction
give you
there.
a minute.
So I'm just curious.
Yeah,
'cause
well,
I-
first of all, this is different, as I mentioned in the beginning, this is different than an education policy. So I think this rises to a different level. Again, we're putting our names to it when we approve a policy of this nature. And again, I think it rises to a different level. It is not like an educational policy. But to your point, there are some things that I've learned over the last 3.5 years that I think sometimes when we get recommendations, people should put their names to the policy. We should know where it comes from. We should know why the recommendation was made. But that's a discussion for another time.
Yeah, and I don't disagree
Yeah.
with
So to
understanding some
answer
of the supporting
specifically,
information.
This, as chair, I felt that this rose to the level, a different level, and that when we're talking about guns in our school, which we've never had before, and arming security officers, which again, no one was opposed to, I think we have to be I think it's very important, and it needs thoughtful consideration. And and policy can be tweaked. I mean, that's what we were trying to do. I know everybody wants an instant situation to occur, but just putting a gun in a holster does not make necessarily good policy. And to
I couldn't agree more, actually.
to a point, the policy suggested that the security functions and the use, putting a gun in, putting guns on our security officers would go by, and they named different New Jersey statutes. And one of the statutes, it said, well, an officer would be eligible to carry a gun if they met the New Jersey state police regulations. And one of those regulations was a psychological report. Now, it turns out that just from, talking to people, a psychological report in this case that would satisfy the state police regulations is a form that a police officer, a retired police officer, fills out saying they don't have a report. It's not really another psychological test. We thought maybe perhaps after you retire, after 25 years, before you go into a school system with children and carry a gun, maybe we should have another actual psychological exam, again, to really make sure that our children are safe. So just saying that we satisfy the New Jersey State Police standard, then when you really look into it a little bit, the standard was, and I have a copy of the application
Not really what we would want.
not really what we would want. So that was part of our concern, that just satisfying that limited standard might not be fully, vet people. And also, That's,
Can I ask another question? If we approve a policy tonight, can it go back? Can it get approved and then still go back?
Yes,
for
yes,
Yes.
because this is
Yes,
only the first
technically, yes.
reading.
One second. Paul?
Yeah.
We're not asking for names on the policy.
Okay,
That's
'cause
not what
that's
we're
what it
asking
sounded
for.
like.
no,
No.
no, not on
We're asking for a memo that justifies the decision they made. It's like, for example, who decided to buy iPads? There has to be a paper trail. Somebody has to be accountable. We can't do business like we did in the past. So we're saying the same thing here. Somebody's making a decision because if you look at the argument that they made, it's less expensive in every way, but it doesn't put any prices there. We don't really know. So there are a lot of things that are left, maybe out of convenience. We don't know. So
I
we're saying.
understand. I think also if you listen to what the Mary Ann Friedman said from school board, she also talked about that word of micromanagement, right?
This
So
is-
it's one
yeah.
thing to oversee, it's another thing to micromanage, and when administrators and business administrators and I get I get your perspective of not taking everything at face value, and I can appreciate that on a certain level, but on another level, we have to make sure we're not micromanaging.
Well, putting a gun in someone's hand is one thing. That's for the board to decide, we
Right.
want it or not.
Right.
Who has the gun? That's a management decision. We want it on a document. That's what we want. That's it.
Mrs. Lang?
Can I ask for clarification, please?
Sure.
So we received the policy, which is and we received the regulation. And the regulation seems to have it much more detailed.
That's what a regulation does.
Okay, so that help me with, help me with that,
Absolutely.
please.
Okay.
Agreed.
So first, I would like to say to Mr. Russo, what your request is and your questions, I understand. This is a very important policy. It rises to a different level. And I would say that I appreciate your background coming in from private industry, which I would assume the UN is considered private industry, but your years of experience with that. And I certainly, and I've said this to you several times, in the education world, we can always do a little bit better in how we present and provide background information. Corporations have been doing these type of things for years and years. With that being said, because of the concern of the community, and because we wanted to address that, we brought forth a policy that was given to us through Strauss Esme, who is actually a lawyer, who looks at state guidelines, and we had our board attorney review it as well. And during our discussions, you presented some very excellent points, and we tried to address them, which explains why we kept on sending different material back. The regulation was one attempt to try to provide more detail in answer to some of the requests that you had. The written memo, God bless you, the document, we absolutely have, and we have begun work on that, and we broke it out into different people, myself, Mr. Gorski, and Mr. Piro, or Pyro, God bless you. Whatever he would prefer. I've heard it both ways now. So we're looking to address some of the questions that you have brought up. And I did give you my word that when you have brought these things up, that some of these things take a little time to compile, and I've been out and researching and pulling up material that supports the arming of police officers from national organizations, different research studies, as well as the importance of the relationships of having our own security as opposed to perhaps bringing in an outside officer through an SRR program or the Tier 3 or Type 3, I forget the exact term for that. So we are compiling that. That does take quite a bit of time, and I would like to be more than happy to bring that back to the policy committee. Our goal was to try to get it up for a first reading, and then between the first reading and the second reading, continue that work. As far as signing a document or signing a memo, every board meeting, all the agenda items are read for personnel and board action with this board. The superintendent recommends. For the business administrator, the business administrator recommends. So I'm not sure where the legality is with actually signing something, but that certainly speaks to the superintendent owning or taking ownership, if you will, for those recommendations. So that's why I take those things very seriously with, let's say, personnel hirings. You know, there was many places where somebody hands us something to the superintendent, they rubber stamp it and take it to the board. I don't do that. I want to make sure that I follow the process through, because I look at that recommendation every month as my name being on that agenda. So I would hope that that would speak to actually owning that recommendation.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. I'll tell you why. There are a lot of details that are mentioned here. Whoever wrote this as the promise of what we'll get are not in the policy. It says a simple stipend. So, a simple stipend sidebar with the MTEA to pay for the officers to hold a gun. We don't know how much that's gonna cost. What's a simple stipend?
Yeah,
How much is that?
The policy, in order, before we could go to the MTA and try to come up with an agreement, we
Yeah.
felt like we could at least get the board to approve.
Yeah, but we wouldn't be buying iPads first and find out what the price is later. These
Agreed.
things should be done first. And we've waited for this memo for 2 months now. And I just can't imagine why you want to put a gun in somebody's hand and nobody's willing to step up to the plate and sign it. I mean, back Pete. Why doesn't the administration back him up?
Well, I do back Pete, actually.
Well, then let's put it in writing. All the other things that are mentioned here, the background check, the mental health check, all these things are thrown at us, and none of them are reality when we talk about.
Well, the mental health check, that's something also that we discussed at length.
Yeah.
When you brought up that it might not be something, or it could be something that was done maybe years ago and you did once, we went back and thought, okay, valid point. So why don't we put in the job description that they would have to undergo a new psychological evaluation in order to be approved?
Look, you guys had 2 months to do it. If it was a serious thing, you back the guy, get everything together. But to sign the policy and approve it on a decision that you guys are making with no other background information and documentation, I don't see how anybody would go along with that.
I mean,
It's
some
not
of the
like
items.
buying a computer. You're giving somebody a gun, and you're choosing who's getting that gun.
Right. I mean, some of the items, such as the psychological, that wasn't really 2 months, but in fairness, when we brought up.
No, because we brought it up.
Yeah.
Had it not been brought up, it wouldn't have been addressed.
Yeah.
Mr. Chiarella?
Is it possible, if we could get everybody on the record tonight, to just get this through the first reading? Because then I think if we can get it past that, then we can go back to the policy committee, Ken, because I'm not on the policy committee, and then they can hash it all out. I'll promise you that if we don't have administrative support across the board for this, I won't vote for it the next time. And you know, it's up to everybody else to do what they're gonna do. But I would also suggest that for number I, that's on your recommendation, that we keep that safety and security specialist the same as it is now to ensure that we have that buy-in across the administration. So that we're not changing that hat and causing a disruption to that, so that we could see it through and give the added buy-in to this whole process and to Mr. Pirro.
I will tell you also that in a conversation, and I mentioned it a couple of times, I think, on this board, in a conversation that I had with the mayor going back a couple of months, this is costing the taxpayers $24,000 a week to have armed township armed police in our district. So it's also, the police, I understand, work 4 days on and 4 days off. And then their 4 days off, they're working in our school system. So they're draining not just their people, they're draining their resources because it takes cars, because the police are in the cars and coming here, and money. So after around the beginning of May, we're not going to have them anymore for a lot of reasons. So it's something that we really need to look at, and I understand all your concerns. A policy and a regulation is different The policy just says that we're going to have armed security. The regulations is
No.
how we're going to utilize that
No,
security.
that policy doesn't say we're gonna have armed security. It says who's gonna be armed. That's what it says.
Right,
And then
right.
the other thing is, when Greenstein came here for the fair funding, she wanted the full board approval for her efforts. She wanted the mayor's approval, and everybody gave it to her, and we got crumbs. And now you guys wanna put guns in the hands of the guys that are on staff, and nobody wants to put their name to it. I'm really surprised.
You could we still have another policy meeting scheduled before the next board meeting.
Well,
And I think
policies,
and I know that we had the discussion of making that policy meeting longer than an hour so that you can get all the information you need to get.
my experience here is that the policies have always dragged out. The nepotism policy is still, it's been going on for the last 8 years. It's never been completed. And this will go the same way. It'll the same thing. I really cannot believe that a memo can't be drafted saying that we made this decision for these reasons. And here's the policy.
Mr. Ryback?
As long as we're bringing out our thoughts, I'm inclined to agree with what Mr. Chiarella said. I think it's a very sensible solution. We need to protect the students and staff in our schools. Unfortunately, we and many other school boards have to have this kind of a conversation. I know I worked in a building. We had a SRO in the building for years, never had a problem. What I see in the news is school shootings, mass shootings, whether it's school, not only in schools, but mass shootings in schools. And I'm sure these schools have security guards, and some of them may have already been armed. But I've never seen anything happen where a school security guard, there was an accident and somebody got hurt because of the school security guard's mistake. We're very fortunate here that our school security guards, I think 7 of them out of the 9, are retired policemen. Policemen have training, they have instincts that we don't necessarily have. You can't predict every little thing that's going to happen in the school. And I guarantee you there isn't a teacher or administrator here that would disagree with that. You never know what's going to happen sometimes. You can't sit and legislate everything that can happen. You just have to be aware and use your experiences and training that we all have to the best of your ability. But I think overall what we need to do is consider passing this, getting extra security in the school, and then working on it for a second reading to alleviate some of the problems and I appreciate some of the things you've been saying.
I think you're making my point, actually. If they feel that strong about it, justify.
And Mr. Rybeck, I would just like to say that I don't disagree with your position. However, it really wasn't the issue as to whether we have high regard for our security guards or not.
No,
That
I
isn't the
didn't
question.
think-
And
no,
like
I
I said,
wasn't.
everybody on the committee is interested in the policy. We just want to make the policy right.
Right, and you made that clear, and I didn't dispute that. I
Thank
don't
you.
dispute that.
Okay, good take over.
Okay,
When the
because
vote-
we're still on committee reports, I think. Any more questions or comments? Committee reports? Then we were going to go on to the public forum for the agenda items only. So you have 4 minutes. If there's anything on the agenda, please state your name and address for the record. You'll have 4-minute time limit.
Mark Klein, 7 Crenshaw. Based on what went on tonight, the discussion, it really opens up the door on a lot of things, but I just want to finish what I have to say. I warned this board, members of this board, prior to you meeting with Greenstein, Benson, and D'Angelo, that you were being used again, as they did with that fake, phony hearing that we had at the Budget and Appropriations Committee. That led to the problem we had at the Ad hoc Committee, because supposedly people were angry that I was on the attack against the 3. And what'd you get? Nothing. You got a big, when Christie came out with another, I forgot how many, $100-some-odd million to distribute to all the schools, we got a big $400,000. Freehold Borough with 1,700 students that already gets $9.7 million got Hespy to have the state pay for to enlarge all their schools, $33 million. They already get $9.7 million, and our so-called elected officials do absolutely nothing for us. I warned you, and that's exactly what happened. As far as the referendum goes, this is more a question. When you say that the middle school is going to cost $68 million, that doesn't count, or does it count, the new staff, the equipment, the furniture, health insurance, insurance for the building, electric, gas? Isn't that all above the $68 million?
No, some of that is would be in the referendum. Furnishing that school would be in the referendum. The staff would be coming from out of the trailers that next year we have 8 classroom trailers. Those classrooms would be moved with the staff into a new middle school. What is not covered is additional staff, like you would need administration there, a nurse there.
Don't use my time. This doesn't count towards my time. I'm
It
watching
does.
Gorski.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
well,
I appreciate the answer.
No, and it would come on, those things would come under the operating budget.
Okay, now, what's going to happen that unfortunately the residents voted down your referendum? First of all, it was at a bad time because many people like myself were down in Florida. Not everybody got absentee ballots, so it was a bad time. But what's going to happen, and it's happened in this state time and time again, is that the residents vote down the referendum, and maybe they'll let you go a second time because that's what happened in Freehold Borough. When it's voted down a second time, then the state's going to come to you and order you to sell bonds to build those schools with total disregard for the taxpayers. And if you remember when Christie came up with that deal that if you stay within 2% of the budget, it doesn't have to go to the public, and I was probably the only one on the board who spoke against it, and Ken Chirilla, we said that the taxpayers have a right to voice their opinion. Everything is going to go the way the board wants and the way the township wants, but the residents have a right to vote on it. Another email that was forwarded to me through Oprah was concerning 14 districts that want to sue. They're getting together and they're going to sue the state. In the emails, it stated that we don't comply or we don't qualify. Well, let me tell you something. I'm the one who started crying to get us more money. Another gentleman here, he's still here, said, well, we ought to write letters to our legislatures. Don't waste your time. I had letters to Christie, I had letters to Corzine, I had letters to Christopher Surf, who was dead. I had letters to everybody. They did absolutely nothing. I sat down with the governor, Governor Christie, like we're talking now. Right out the door. Nothing happened. They don't give a damn about us.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Your 4 minutes is up.
Just one more fast thing, please?
How fast?
Okay. Well, actually, it's 2 things. The letters, actually,
No,
one thing.
Miss-
Letters to
Miss-
the,
We have another
property-
public forum coming
No,
up.
I understand. Property value per student.
Mr. Klein, I really have to ask.
Okay. Mike, if you can answer that, what does that count? Is that all the homes, including the adult homes? Or is it should be, and then I'm finished. It should be just the homes that have children, then it's fair. But if you have, and we're getting down low, if you have 40% that are adults over 55, why should they count into the equation? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the extra time.
You're quite welcome.
Good evening, Mike Costello, 22 Garvey Drive. I'd like to get back to the discussion of the armed people in the schools. We had a situation here, and the Florida thing kind of set things off. There was a reaction. Things were done. We now have police officers here on a regular basis. The town is paying for that. The monies, my biggest concern is not the monies. My concern is I think we made a mistake. We should not have guns in the schools. We need to increase our security. We need to do many other things, but we do not need guns in the schools. We do not need guns in the schools. We have to work on other solutions. We had a meeting 2 nights ago at the senior center, which was well attended. Mr. Gorski was there. We had some really good points made by everyone. I think it was a good discussion. We had 4 very, very bright young people on the panel up there, and 4 people, 2 police officers, Mr. Gorski and the other fellow, the legislative guy.
That's Mr. Gorski.
That's
I'm
Dr.
sorry.
Kozak.
Sorry.
And the other fellow on the end, the legislative fellow that was there talking. When we talked to each of the 4 students individually, 3 out of the 4 students do not want guns in the school. 3 out of the 4 people that are affected, these are the people that are in danger or whatever. And the other gentleman over here, and Mr. Arminio, they spoke. It looks like they want to watch what they're doing and be very careful with the policy, but I'm afraid it sounds almost like we are already committed that we're going to do this, and it's just how we're going to do it, and what are we going to control, and are the people going to be tested and psychoanalyzed and everything. I think we have to take a step back. We have a major problem in our society. This never happened when we were growing up. I remember when Jack Kennedy got killed, it was the first guy since, I guess, McKinley that we tried to assassinate. This stuff didn't go on. It does go on now. It's a fact of life. And if they don't shoot them in schools, they may go other places. Yes, we have to do everything we can to protect, but we do not have to put extra danger, more weapons in the schools. I'm very much opposed to it. I think you should go very, very cautiously before you go down that road. Right now, in this building and other buildings in Monroe, as we discussed the other night, the security is not what it could be. We need to keep guns out of the schools from perpetrators, and also we do not need to have armed people in here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anthony Prezioso, Way to Equestrian Way. That fellow just said that there was a meeting for security at the rec center?
I don't know of any meeting.
Well, Mr. Gorski was there. Were you
No.
at this meeting?
No, there was a meeting at the senior center on Monday.
And that was about what?
Security, school security.
Were you there?
I attended as a member of the public.
And Mr. Gorski attended as?
He did not attend. Dr. Kozak attended.
Yeah, I was asked to be on the panel along with the police chief and some of our students and other people and stuff.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I think it was about gun control in general, not school security.
Prakash Parab, 33 Dana Drive. Still, I request for the fair funding, the BOE members, please write, okay? I was there with Dr. Kozak for two meetings. I have seen what's going on there. There are a new commissioner who's going to get hired. He said, governor is ready to change the formula. Governor is ready to, he heard different districts. He's going to remove the caps and all, so they are thinking. So here we don't back off, okay? In the past, you guys have might have not done correctly, but strategically, I'm going to request the residents and the BOE members write to the Speaker of the House, Senate, President, Governor, send one letter or call them, okay? Monroe has to be heard, okay? And it is not just now the legislators are elected. They are going to be here for another 2 or 3 years. So let us work with legislators, not just bang them. Let us work with them. Secondly, this is, again I said, this is 9:45. Still we have public forum, we could only fix to the agenda. This is, I'm requesting y'all, I'm going to ask, I want parents can come here and talk, ask questions. They cannot stay here before 9:30. Now, if you want actually officially parents talk, they have to stay here till 11 o'clock. So, do you agree that you'll take this into consideration, please?
It's part of our policy or bylaws on how how the agenda is done, so we would have to go look at that again.
Yes, please do so, because that is what I'm hearing from the public, okay? Okay, so second question. I'm following with the dialogue already had, okay? Dr. Kozak's contract. Now, I heard that, can you just brief me, his contract is over in June, or whatever it is. So board has unanimously taken a decision. How I'm not sure. Can you explain to me?
Since it's a confidential matter between the Board of Education and the superintendent, I could just say that there is nothing on the agenda to support or to vote on a contract, and Dr. Kozak's contract expires on June 30th.
So what the policy and the law says?
Well, it has to do with the contract and some statutes. I don't have either one of them in front of me, so I don't wish to make any kind of statement without having that information available right at this point.
Okay, so my request is, because you don't have it today at this, can I have it? Can you all email or find a process? I'm ready to come and listen to it.
Well, I believe you have, he has the right to Oprah it, right?
Oprah what?
His contract.
Yes.
You have the right to Oprah Dr. Kozak's contract.
The policy, just help me here. I want to know, as a public, I'll see Dr. Contract, but what the policy says, what the contract says.
It's not a policy, it's a state statute.
So what the state statute says, so give me the document, give us the document, we'll read it.
You can go online and look at that document.
Okay, if I don't find it, I will ask the district office to show me that contract. So those are thank you very much. So please consider about the agenda so the parents can come and speak, okay? Thank you.
Yes.
Hi there, Deborah Palella, 15 Louise Lane. I actually don't know the man who just went, other than the meetings, but I actually have heard from several parents that, including some of my friends, they don't come to meetings because with the time for public, it is so late, and it's very difficult. As you know yourselves, as parents and working parents, it would be great if there was any sort of looking into policy change of moving the public forum perhaps to an earlier time in the meeting, if possible. I understand it may not happen right away, but it definitely was a great idea, and I've heard it myself around town. Regarding what was said earlier about the suing of the state for funding, I just want to say that a few years ago, so 3 schools ago, prior to redistricting, I was one of hundreds of parents that went down to Trenton, held up our signs saying fair funding, fair funding. I feel that nothing was done, as we all know. Reason looking for this lawsuit, I think, is the fact that our students are not valued as high as other students in the state. Our students are valued at the dollar amount we are given by the state, which is, let's say, $337. East Brunswick students are valued at $22.50, Old Bridge $33.50, Newark $18,000, Red Bank $22,000, whatever the numbers are that were in the home news. That alone appears to be a bias against our town and what we are comprised of. And if it's a bias because we have a larger senior population, whatever it is, I do hope that there is truth behind that the new administration in perhaps Trenton is going to look at this. But I'm not going to hold my breath. I've been here coming to these meetings for almost 9 years now, and we keep doing the same efforts, and I do not think they're working. And to be honest, the efforts that we put the board or administration put behind trying to get the referendum passed, if that information was instead about how we're not funded properly, you would have so many more parents aware of what the real situation is, because many are not able to come to these meetings. They don't know the facts of how underfunded we are, other than their taxes keep going up. But the fact is, if we could get more money from the state, we'd have more money for all of these items we're trying to get pushed through today that we can't because of budgetary constraints. So if that much effort was put into letting these parents be aware of, not even just parents, everyone in our town know about something that wasn't a referendum, but the fact that we could try to get more money and how to do it, I think it would just be a really better way to get these things. Senator Ruiz said to Linda Greenstein when we were there, she turned around, she goes, "Why would I vote for this? Someone in my district's gonna want more money too in their schools. Why would I give it to yours?" Those were her words. I heard it out of her mouth. It was an obvious, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. Nothing is gonna change in Trenton. We, as Monroe, need to do something about it, because that one thing I heard out of Ruiz's mouth is gonna come out of another one, whoever's voted in, against Greenstein, because she's for us, and it's not their part of the state. We have to care about us, nobody else is. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chrissy Skirby, 21 Preakness Drive. I just had a couple questions. With the security meeting, was that open to the public?
Yes, I believe it was.
How come the district didn't send out some sort of information to the parents, or did you that we didn't? No parents that I've spoken to here this evening knew anything about it.
It did not come from the district, it came from the township.
But if our superintendent is participating on a panel to discuss safety in our schools, shouldn't the district parents be invited to that? We had one already we had a panel discussion with hundreds of parents that attended that came out and voiced their concerns. I'm just curious why no information came from the district that yet another security panel was happening.
Actually, I think it was run by a group, a fairly new group called Indivisible. And they're looking for voter registration, and they put on a presentation on
But
gun
if our
control.
superintendent in our district is going to participate in a panel discussion on school safety in our schools, I think that next time, the parents of our district should be invited to that or informed of that so that we can attend as well if it's open to the public. Secondly, I know it was said in the budget presentation that we're expecting 450 students into the district next year. Do we know where the concentration of those students are going to, what schools those students are going to be going to?
Do we have any idea how to tell?
Yeah, I was just looking up for the enrollment. Here it is. The enrollment as it stands right now, as you know, I mean, it's on the agenda, has gone up. The difference, the largest difference really is occurring at the high school with 134 students. Applegarth with a difference of 39
Correct.
students. Right. The
Correct.
same- yeah, it's on
But
there.
we're saying 450 new students into the district next year was what was presented, correct?
Yes.
Where are we expecting that? Because you're right. That's exactly my point, Dr. Kozak, that the
Right.
biggest increase has been at the high school.
Yeah.
And I think that you lost a lot of support amongst the parents for the referendum because the high school edition was not on the referendum. And that's exactly my point of asking these questions is we are seeing the largest growth and we are seeing the most student impact at the high school over it. Currently now, for incoming freshmen next year, students have to try out now for a percussion class that they currently do not have to try out for, and I think 6 or 7 spots are only going to be available. Incoming freshmen are no longer, from what was presented at the freshman orientation, are going to be allowed to take graduation requirements in their freshman year. One of those classes is a cooking class. If you're going into culinary arts and you want to have that focus in high school, you have to take Cooking 1 as early as you can to get the advanced level classes. Well, now that's not going to be offered to the freshmen. So there is a direct impact on the students at the high school with the increased enrollment. And that was a lot of the concern that the parents had with the referendum. So I'm hoping, I know we're talking about going back to the drawing board and coming up with a referendum. I'm hoping that this will seriously be looked at what's going on at the high school and the curriculum and the courses and who's being allowed to take classes, what's not being offered anymore to incoming freshmen, and address that with the referendum. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Then at this time, I'll close public forum, and we'll go to the superintendent's report. Dr. Kozak?
Okay, thank you, Madam President. As been mentioned a couple times tonight, I just wanted to reiterate, there was a state aid rally in Trenton this past Monday, and Dr. Prakash Pranav and I attended that rally. We really got late notice of this rally. We have been going to assembly hearings and Senate hearings where they had public portions where we were allowed to speak, and we have been going and presenting our case for the need for more funding for Monroe Township. This was the group of superintendents that I've been working with. They're superintendents for fair funding throughout central North Jersey and South Jersey, coming together, and we got a press release or a media meeting, I guess, on the State House steps. And we all got up and spoke, and we said everything we had to say. And I know it's frustrating for the people in the town who have been fighting for years and years and years to get additional state funding. And I'm hopeful with the new governor and some of the comments that I'm hearing from the legislators, as they've been hearing from many, many people across the state who are becoming better organized at combining townships and districts, so it's not just one district or another. 2 years ago was $458,000. For this coming year, it's another 300 and some thousand. Again, really a drop in the bucket, but it's more than we've gotten before. So we're hoping that that trend will continue. The Senate President Sweeney has again said that he is going to withhold his support for the state budget until more money is given to the underfunded districts. And for our district in particular, this is the first time that I've heard it, where the legislators are starting to talk about enrollment caps, about removing the enrollment caps. So I know that's something that's been pushed for many years, and I hope they're not just giving us lip service, but I really hope that maybe that is a serious consideration, because we're not alone. Monroe is not alone in being a district that is severely underfunded due to student enrollment growth. So that is something that touches on a number of districts. Monday evening, as been stated, I was asked to sit on a panel for Monroe Indivisible. I was joined by the police chief, Michael Lloyd, Lieutenant Robinson, 4 of our high school students, a representative from Moms Demand Action, and others to speak about school safety. The mayor, town council members, Senator Greenstein, board president Kathy Kalpanovich, and board vice president Steve Ryback, and our director of security, Pete Pirro, were in attendance, along with many members of the senior community. This seemed, I think the League of Women Voters were involved. It seemed to really be addressed toward the members of the senior community. And we did have an open discussion, and there was a question and answer period at the end of that, just to talk about concerns that people have about security, things that we have done, and there were questions about law that were directed to the police chief as well. Proud to say, in addition to all of the other academic awards and honors that our students are getting and are achieving, and are really doing wonderful things, and our teachers are doing wonderful things, I also think it's important to also bring up that there were multiple events in our schools to honor Autism Awareness Month. And many of our schools or different areas have found ways to light it up blue to show their support. And this is an annual event. So in addition to everything else, that was nice to see that recognition. On our agenda, on the personnel section, I would like to bring your attention to letters A through letters A through E. Letters A through E are members of our staff who have submitted their retirement, the resignation due to retirement. And I know in June we recognize
A through F.
Sorry, A through F, okay. That we recognize the personnel, the people who are retiring. But I just wanted to give a quick, where is it at? sorry. I just want to give a quick mention to these people who have devoted so many years of service. So the first is Joan Kofke, 16 years of service to the students and staff in the community. Mrs. Linda Kalora, 25 years. Mrs. Deborah Stoller, 11 years. Miss Jerry Sullivan, 11 years. And Mrs. Myrna Klein, 9 years.
You missed one.
Susan Lowry.
And Mrs. Lowry, I missed that one. That's the update. And I'm sorry I don't have the number of years for Mrs. Lowry. That was an update. But we'll recognize these people in June. But again, for that number of years, for each of those people that have devoted, I just think I wanted to bring mention to those devoted and dedicated staff members. On the board agenda tonight, has been mentioned already, is, this is letter BK under personnel, if you want to check, is the recommendation for Dawn Graziano to be the recommended for the principal position at Applegar School. And I just wanted to, I went through this with the Personnel Committee, but I just wanted to mention what the competition, how difficult a decision that was. The competition was fierce. We had 90 people apply. We narrowed that number down to 11 candidates who were brought before a committee of myself, Dr. Alvick, 2 teachers, 3 administrators, 2 parents. I believe I got everybody on that. And that was the first round. And out of those 11 candidates, we took, we had a rubric that I used. And the people in the committee, Ms. Graziano was the top rated in the first round. And we brought her to a second round along with 3 other candidates. It's freezing here. 3 other candidates. It's maybe it's because I'm sitting here, but I know I'm looking over. It is. It's cold in here. And again, in the second round, questions, multiple questions, writing samples, all different things that we put these candidates through. And I have to give kudos to the 3 other candidates who were not selected. They were all excellent. Any one of them could have walked in and have really filled the position, but I can't say enough that Dawn Graziano, just in the first and the second round, was the top-rated candidate. And we, of course, saw her as she did her interim work in the schools, both at the middle school, jumped in a year ago, and also at our elementary schools. And it was not only seeing that, but it was really the interview process. If we took the interim work out, the interview process alone, she really shone through that. So I see that she's hiding back there, and I would like her to stand up and be recognized. And don't say anything yet. They haven't voted, okay? Wait till they get done voting. But I just wanted to commend Ms. Graziano, and what an excellent job that she did. And that her name is on the agenda tonight for recommendation. Under board action, I also wanted to bring to your attention is on letter E, is the revised school calendar, and the last inclement school day that has to be made up, inclement weather day, is being recommended for June 22nd. It'll take the school calendar to a Friday, the end of that week. And we did get a letter from the county superintendent okaying that, even though our high school graduation is Tuesday evening, I believe, right? So the seniors will still be responsible to coming into school through Friday. I said they'll be responsible. I didn't say they were going to show up. I said they're going to be responsible. And letter K, again, we had talked about that. That's the policy to allow the armed security officers in our school, and I think there was an excellent discussion tonight, and hopefully I'll be able to fulfill the request. Did I give you the wrong letter?
No, you're right.
It's K.
You're right.
Okay.
I thought you were talking about the other one.
Oh, okay, yeah. But hopefully we'll be able to supply all the information that the policy committee is looking for. And again, something else, this is actually under more Sikorsky's, but I do want to speak to this. that instructional technology, the iPads, I was determined this year to not have it go, I really wanted to be fully vetted. So after we had the night meeting here, and we only had a handful of people, we asked that the companies come in and present to the entire school, and they set up for it. We selected 2 companies. They spent the entire day here. High school students, staff could come in and out and speak to them. We also got them to pilot. They give us 30 units each to pilot for, I believe, a month. So we really took it through a process to what I believe was a very stringent process to really narrow it down and to come up with that final recommendation. So I hope the board will consider that recommendation as well. With that, Madam President, I would like to recommend under, under personnel, items A through BN.
So moved.
Mr. Chiarella? Mr. Ryback?
That's A through B as in boy, BN, the letters.
So it's a motion by Mr. Chiarella, second by Mr. Ryback. Any comments or questions for Dr. Kozak? Okay, seeing none, we'll have a roll call.
Mrs. Arminio.
Yes, but no on B as in boy, M as in Mary.
Yes, but no as in B as in boy, M as in Mary. So noted. Mr. Braverman.
Yes on everything except BK. No.
No on B and K.
BK.
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 Beg your pardon. So noted. Mr. Chiarella.
Yes.
Mrs. DeMayo.
Yes.
Mrs. Lang.
Yes.
Mrs. Carino.
Yes, I am so honored to vote for Ms. Graziano. My daughter was lucky enough to have her twice. The best.
Mr. Ryback.
Yes.
Mr. Russo.
Yes, except for BM. I just have a question, if I can ask.
Well, now's the time for the vote, not the question.
Okay, well, then it's yes, and BM, Mary, no.
So noted. Mr. Rutsky.
Yes to all.
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Yes.
Madam Board President, personnel items A through BN has passed.
Can I ask my question?
Sure.
When a staff member moves from a part-time position to a full-time position, is there a need for them to apply on Apple Track?
If a staff member is transferred, if you're asking like they're applying for a position.
They're a part-time person,
Right.
and they're moved to a full-time position. Do they have to apply for that position?
Unless we're transferring them, yes. We post all the positions.
So you can transfer somebody from part-time to full-time?
They would have to go to a board vote on that because it would be a difference in pay, I believe,
and
Mr. Russo.
that's what's happening here
Believe.
in BM. Yeah, that's what's happening here. And I think that should be looked into further, if that's the case, because
BM is a number of people, are you talking about?
Mary, no, it's, well, there's a few of them, but I think it needs to be looked into.
Not a transfer, right? But,
Well, it says transfer,
okay.
but, you know, if someone's moving from part-time to full-time, is that a transfer? Or a new job?
I mean, the only thing that there's an answer to your question if you want to, I mean, I don't know if it's considered a new job, but in certain situations, and certainly with paraprofessionals, when we move people to different positions, it could depend on either training that they've had, it's usually they follow the child, right? The needs of the child. So.
Well, are you familiar with these cases?
I'm familiar with, I believe, all of them. I mean, I'm not.
Can I ask that they be looked into?
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
I'd just like to congratulate Ms. Graziano, who's not paying any attention. in following Mr. V's footsteps into Applegarth School.
Yeah. Because it's my understanding that, new job.
All right, I will look into it.
I thought we agreed sometime in the past that any full-time job had to be posted.
Yeah, we do,
Remember
and
that?
everything on
We went-
Track, we did discuss
Yes,
that,
yeah.
and that's what we do.
So, okay.
So if it did not occur that way, I will look into that, but I do want to
I would appreciate, can you get back to us on that, too?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Oh, should we go to board action, I guess? right? Sorry,
I was waiting for you to write it down.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, and,
You're up to Rutsky. Oh, you voted.
I did already.
okay. So I recommend to the board items A through R under board action.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Chiarella, Mr. Ryback, again, any questions for Dr. Kozak? Mr. Chiarella?
I'm just going to just make a statement, if I may. I'm going to not vote on, I'm gonna vote no on I, because I think we need to preserve that continuity, especially going through a transition. I will vote yes for K for the first reading, but then I'm going to, rely on the policy committee, obviously, to let us know if they got what that they were satisfied, and that'll determine my next vote.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay,
I'm voting, well,
we'll have a roll call then.
yes.
Mrs. Arminio,
Yes on all except I and K.
where you vote?
I vote no, I'm sorry. I and K.
Thank you. Mr. Braverman,
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella,
Yes on all except I.
Where you vote,
Excuse me? I'm sorry.
where your vote, what do you, oh,
I vote no on I.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
so noted. Mrs. DeMayo,
Yes.
Mrs. Lang,
Yes.
Mrs. Carino,
Yes to all except for I.
Will you vote?
I vote no.
so noted. Mr. Ryback.
Yes.
Mr. Russo,
Yes for all except I and K. I vote no on those.
so noted. Mr. Rutsky,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
yes.
Madam Board President, board action items A through R has passed.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes your
That
report.
concludes my report, Madam.
And we will go to the Business Administrator's report with Mr. Gorski.
Thank you, Madam. Madam Board President and members of the Monroe Township Board of Education, it is recommended that board action items A through Q be approved by consent roll call.
So moved.
Mr. Ryback, Mrs. Lang, comments or questions for Mr. Gorski? Seeing no, we'll have a roll call.
Mrs. Arminio.
Yes.
Mr. Braverman.
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella.
Yes.
Mrs. DeMayo.
Yes.
Mrs. Lang.
Yes.
Mrs. Carino.
Yes.
Mr. Ryback.
Yes.
Mr. Russo.
Yes.
Mr. Rutsky.
Yes to all.
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Yes.
Madam Board President, board action items A through Q has passed unanimously. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Okay, then we go to number 13 on the agenda, other Board of Education business. Is there any other business from any member of the Board of Education? Mr. Ryback?
Thank you. Just two fast things. I had the pleasure of attending the academic recognition dinner at Ford's Gate, and I can't tell you how impressive it is to see our students and what they intend to major in, and certainly changed a lot from when I was in high school. Certainly credit to their families, their teachers, administrators, and certainly to those students. I also, on the 18th, I attended Falcon Pals at the high school, which is a wonderful program headed by Kathleen Dillon, who does a great job every year with these students. And it's really enlightening to see how our students just gel. Regular ed and special ed students just gel together. And the positive results that it has on all of them and their families.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Arminio?
Yes, I'd just like to notify the members of the board, that on June 1st, New Jersey School Boards Association is having a workshop for school security. It's a Friday. I think it starts at about 8:30 and it does go till 3. I will be attending, hopefully. I do have to get out of work for that. But I would encourage anybody on the board to go, and if some of the administrators can go, and perhaps our school security director. I don't know, we can't mandate anybody to go, but I thought if it's possible to voluntarily get to this. Yes, it's going to be at Mercer County College, and we have to register through school boards, but through the business administrator, because I believe there may be a fee, and the fee is paid for by the district.
And it's June 1st, what time?
Well, I think they start like 8:30, and it goes till about 3 o'clock.
So it's an all-day program?
Yeah, it's on school boards, and they have sent it through our emails. So if you just go to the school board's events or agendas, you'll see it.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure,
Okay.
of course.
So I do have the county roundtable meeting with the county superintendent. I might be able to get out of that and attend. But did you say it is open to others besides school board members like you?
I think when I read it, it said anybody in the, I think, district
Okay.
people can go.
So
yeah.
Pete possibly could?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, we'd have to
Okay.
just read it. I just, I picked
Okay.
up on it recently, and I just, I
Sure.
didn't pull it out, so it has to be on, yeah. I
All right.
believe so, because a lot of times, there are, like, all kinds of district members that go to these
Sure.
meetings.
Okay, so do you have the information?
I do not offhand.
Okay.
Yeah.
If,
I'm sorry?
wi-
I'm sorry? No. So Mr. Pierre is already registered, as I'm told.
oh.
Okay, so.
All right,
I'll-
so we'll
I'll-
get the
I'll be
information
registered.
then.
Yeah.
We'll ask Nancy to
Great.
get that along so we can get other people registered.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Kathy?
Mrs. Lang?
So I just have to report out that I attended a school boards training this weekend with over 100 other school board members across the state. And we talked about working effectively as a board. It was an awesome training, and I just wanted to share that my favorite part is always on advancing student achievement. And at some point when we're looking into what our other training should be, I would really love if we could have the representative, Mr. DeLuca, from school boards come in and talk about student achievement and all the different ways that we as a school board would work toward it.
Okay.
Madam President.
Ms. Arminio?
To that, actually, Ms. Lang reminded me that in the past, I've asked if we could get a report on our board members and our credits in training, because I thought that one of our goals, again, I'm repeating myself, that one of our goals was to get additional training other than what's required in the year. So I was hoping that perhaps you could supply that.
So,
No, for the whole board, though.
Oh, okay, because you can get your own.
Yes, I understand that, but we were told,
so
we
you
did it
want
as
report
a
from New
board
Jersey
goal.
School boards
Yeah.
on training for our
No,
district?
No. One of our goals for the Board of Education, and I think Ms. Lang actually brought it up originally, was that we get additional training other than what is required on an annual basis for each member. And I think we had agreed that we would all try to get additional training. And so my question, and I know that the the New Jersey School Board representative said it's possible to give you an update on how we're all doing if we've gotten extra training.
So who's had training and what they've had training in? Is
Or
what
the
you're-
amount of, no, not what we've had training, it's just the credits, if we've gotten more than we're required on an annual basis.
Okay.
Madam, if it pleases the board, my secretary and I keep track of board member training, and I'll be happy to follow up with school boards and send that out in the weekly update.
Okay,
Or whatever.
that's great.
That would be fine, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Because that'll go towards our board goals.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, Mr. Ryback?
Yeah, I forgot, I'm sorry, one item. I know in a discussion, I don't know if it was at a board meeting or a committee meeting, I was curious as to, because I know the question came up from the public numerous times about students getting closed out of classes at the high school. And I had brought that up, and I think we said we were going to ask guidance, the guidance department, if they had any report, and I just wondered if that was still in the process or.
Yeah, I did, and I thought I had sent you the answer, because I did reach out to Dr. Critelli on that, who handles a lot with the guidance and with classes. And she said it's a very difficult thing to know. Students put in multiple choices, and it's hard to come up with an exact answer. Did somebody actually get shut out of a class or another class? Certainly, it's a concern we have as the enrollment goes up and students aren't able to get into some classes. But she said it was very hard to come up with a specific number because kids may put multiple choices. Sometimes they even, when they're doing their scheduling, they might put it on there and then later change. So she couldn't really come up and quantize and say, yes, 10 students, 100 students, weren't able to get their courses that they wanted to get. But students are able to get into the AP courses, as far as I know. I've heard from parents that have brought up that maybe said that somebody can't get into this section or another section, and that's certainly very believable. But she wasn't able to come back and say definitively yes, because again, they do the multiple choices on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
I just want to make sure that everyone at this table puts their phones away throughout the meeting. I think that needs to be a board policy. The texting and stuff during board meetings needs to end. I'd just like to make sure that we're not communicating with members of the public, that we're not communicating to boyfriends, girlfriends, or whatever during the meetings. So I
Might
just
be
want to.
good to put on the agenda too.
Yeah,
'cause
that
we
would be
have a
awesome.
few
Thank you.
reminders so that we could put that on, no cell phones on the table, or all cell phones off. Okay? Anyone else? If not, then we'll go to another public forum. And you get to speak for 4 minutes.
I never had so much fun in all my life.
This gives you a total of more than 12 tonight.
Surprising, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, talking about the iPads, why can't the students pay for them? At least pay half. Maybe they'll take care of them. As you know, those of you who were on the board when I was on the board, I was probably the only one that voted against it. So I'm hoping that they're using it, but everything that we were told by Assistant Superintendent Gorman turned out to be misleading, for lack of a better word. As far as security, the new schools that are being built by the state, see, they don't build schools for us. They have cameras in every hallway, every door, and they have a security guard that has all these on a screen. And he's able to monitor that, and then, God forbid, there's a problem, students fighting, whatever it may be, they can respond to it. We have an opportunity, you have plenty of retired police officers who are qualified to use weapons. They know what to do. I was in Florida when Parklands happened. My cousin's 2 daughters went to Parkland High School, and they wound up coming back. They're working now, but they came back to be with the families. And you had 2 or 3 sheriffs that responded right away, and they stayed outside. It was only until a police officer showed up from, I guess that would be, I think that's still Broward County. When he showed up, then he went in, and I guess, I don't know whether they followed him or not. But if you have a gentleman like this that has the experience, and you have him monitor all those hallways and all those doors, and he can respond right away, that's what we need. A regular police officer, no, it's too expensive. This position could be part-time, as long as it's under 40 hours. I'm sorry. But you have the other job. So that takes care of that. My last thing, there was one other thing I was going to bring up, but we'll do that in private. I saw on the Oprah emails the excuses
of why we can't sue. And I'll be honest with you. I was the one that brought up suing back in 2010, 2011. I stuck with my guns. I knew this would happen. And I did everything in my power, contacting the people in Trenton and having talks with them and all. After seeing this in the email, I give up. You will never see me at a Board of Ed meeting again, as I told you at the ad hoc committee. I will never be back at this meeting. I will never voice anything. No great loss. You don't need me. I only wish that whoever is on the board, whether it be people that are on now or people who come back every year, we have 3 seats up, that we get qualified people that try to do the best they can. Dr. Kozak, you're a class act. I loved everything that you did. Again, I don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but you've handled yourself as a professional. To my knowledge and everything that I've read, you've done what was best for our students and what's best for our taxpayers. You were willing to fight. So that's the way I close. Oh, the last thing, by the way, is the incident that happened here with our past superintendent and myself that went viral. My friend's daughter is assistant superintendent up in Wayne or some area there, and she went to a conference or training, you may have even gone, for superintendents. And guess what video they showed?
How not
So
to-
I'll have pictures
Board members
next
gone
time.
wild.
I'll be more than happy to autograph them for you. The point is, I'm not making fun of it. What happened there is, I can say whatever the hell I want, respectfully. But the superintendent or anybody on the board has to, I won't say answer, but has to respond in a professional manner. And those of you who are here, that were here, or saw it on YouTube, know that that's probably why they're showing it, because he did not handle himself properly. Dr. Kozak, you're a class act. The others, thank you. Thank you for giving me the time to speak. Thank you for the years that I've been involved, both on the board and as a loudmouth resident. And I was hoping I would make a difference. But
You
I
have
can't
made a
take it anymore.
difference.
I give up.
And we appreciate all you've
I
done.
totally give up. Thank you.
And we will miss you.
Anthony Prezioso, 8 Equestrian Way. Mark, you forgot to add, Dr. Kozak, on the website I saw that Monroe Township moves up 304 spots in all high school rankings in the United States from last year. So that's because of your leadership, and I want to thank you for that. I have a question for either Michael or Kathy. In the superintendent's contract, his contract will end July 1st,
June 30th.
June 30th, okay. April 1st is the deadline for him to get 90 days' notice.
Yes.
What happens after that? What is your responsibility as a board? And I know there's a law there that says you have to give him the 90-day notice, or else you have to give him a new contract, 2 years or 3 years. So what is the delay?
He did receive his required statutory notice.
Excuse me?
He did receive the required statutory notice.
You didn't make an announcement here.
No, I did not make an announcement. That is usually between the board and the superintendent.
Well, I think some of the board members should question that. You're only going to cost us a lot of money. That's what you're going to cost us. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one, we'll close the public forum and go to closed session resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Township of Monroe hereby moves to go into closed session in accordance with the Sunshine Law, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, NJSA 10:4-6 through 10:4-21, to discuss the following subjects: harassment, intimidation, and bullying, negotiations with the MTEA. We'll just leave it. Following closed session, action may be taken. The discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public at such time as the need for confidentiality no longer exists. I need a motion and a second. Who's first?
Is it MTEA or not? No.
MTEA.
Is no longer on
Well,
here.
it's on there. I could just,
No, I thought it was removed this afternoon.
oh, it was removed? All right, then we'll remove it.
I make a motion.
So she's the, Patty, Mrs. Lang
I'll
is the
second that.
first, and Ms. Arminio is the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Then this shouldn't take much more than 10, 15 minutes. At this time, the board will move back into public session, and I think we have a public forum. Anybody wishing to speak? Okay, seeing none, we will close public forum, and our next scheduled Board of Education meeting is scheduled for May 9th, 2018, 7 o'clock p.m. at the Monroe Township High School, where we will recognize the Teachers of the Year. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mr. Mayo, Mr. Ryback, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Then the meeting is adjourned.